Does your website look something like this? Does it look good? No, I don't think so. But what is if we could actually change that in today's video? Wait, what do you have on my screen right here? Is this a portfolio website? Is this what we are going to build in this video? Yes, you're right. This is what we are going to build in today's video. This is a portfolio website which uses actually a bento grid layout, which looks beautiful in my opinion. And this is actually not all. We'll also create a guestbook page when user can write a message, and we'll create a projects page where we actually render our recent project. But let's start from the start. What will we use for this video? Or in other words, what technology will we use? So for this website, we'll use Next.js.14 with the app router. We'll use server components, we'll use caching, we'll of course also use server actions, for example, for our guestbook. So if I want to actually write a message right here, so let's say, hey, cool video, and click on sign for free, we have a pending state, we have a revalidation, and our form resets. But that's not all. What if we actually want to authenticate our users? Well, for that, my kind friends at Kind actually sponsored today's video to make authentication very easy. So what we'll do in this example for the guestbook right here is, first of all, authenticate the user, and then actually only allow the user to create right here a message. Then if we, for example, look at the projects page right here, we'll use Sanity.io, which is a headless CMS, to query right here our project and then display them right here. We'll also, for example, use caching to revalidate the data. We set a time frame of 30 seconds, and then our data is being revalidated. For our homepage, we'll use, of course, Tailwind CSS to make this beautiful UI. We'll use actually shadcn UI for components like, for example, this button or this navigation menu. Then we will, of course, also make beautiful animations. For example, look at this button, look how beautiful that is. And all of this is, of course, also responsive. So if I now go on a mobile screen, what you'll see is that this is completely responsive and also looks great on a mobile screen. So yeah, this is the beautiful website which we'll build today. It has everything from a good UI to a good UX, good functionality. We use advanced features like server actions, caching, we do mobile design. Everything is created right here, and everything will be also shown in this free video. And now before we actually get started, there's only one thing which I'll ask you right here, and that's to please like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me, and if you want to actually support the channel either further, also consider becoming a channel member. But now, without any further ado, let's get started with this video and let's create this beautiful website right here together. So let's go. Okay, I think it's now time to actually get started, so let me cd into my desktop directory, let me cd into my YouTube directory, and let me run npx create-next-app at latest to install the latest package of Nextjs. As you see, the CLI will now ask me a few questions, so let me name my project, I don't know, portfolio. I think this is sufficient. Then let's of course use TypeScript, let's use ESLint, let's use Tailwind. We won't use the source directory because we'll use the app router. We won't customize the default import alias. Now let me click enter, and as you see now the installation will take a bit, so once that's done I will come back. Alright, our installation is finally done, so I can now head over to Visual Studio Code and open a project, and as you see I already did that, and if you want to do the same, go on top on File and click on Open Folder. And what you see right here is just this empty project right now with a few normal files like the package.json file where we have our installed packages or dependencies, in other words. We have our app folder where we have our routes and the global .css file. We have a public folder where we store our static files, so nothing really groundbreaking. But what we, I think, should do right now is first of all actually start our dev server so that we can actually see our website. So what I have to do is click on Command J to open the terminal, or you can go on top and click on Terminal and New Terminal. And then inside of here, let's now do npm 1dev to start our dev server. This will now open on localhost 3000, so let me head over to Chrome and open that. Alright, I'm now in Chrome, and this is localhost 3000, so our dev server is running, and this is our website. Does it look nice? Nope, or I guess it looks nice, but it's not quite what we want. So what I can do right now is go in the page.tsx file, which lives in the app folder right here, and this is just right now the index page as you see it right here. So what I'll do right here is delete everything in the return statement, so this whole main element, let me delete that, and let's right now just return an h1 and let's say hello from the index page. Let's save that, let's again go back, and now you see hello from the index page. So okay, we see that works. Now one thing I currently don't like is that we have a black background. So even though it looks alright, but what I want to do is actually have a white background. So what we have to do is go to the globals.css file, and then right here you now see add Tailwind classes, and then a bit of, I guess, other styles. Now these styles have been added when installing Nextjs, and we don't need them. We only need the Tailwind classes. So we need the Tailwind classes to make Tailwind CSS work, but this other stuff is just not needed for this project. So I will just delete that, leave the Tailwind classes, and if I now go back, we now have the white background which I wanted. Okay, cool, this fully works, and I think we can now actually get started with our project. So what's the first thing we need? Well, I think the first thing which we need is actually the navbar. So the navbar is the thing which lives on the top, so I think it's also automatically the best thing to start with. So for that, I will open our Explorer again, go in the app folder, and inside of here, let me create a new components folder, and then in the components folder, let's create a navbar.tsx. Let me now close that, and inside of here, we'll now create a navbar component. So to do that, we have to do an export function. Let's just call it navbar, let's invoke that, and let's open that. Inside of here, let me just create a return statement, and let me just return an h1, and then let's just say hello from the navbar. And now let me actually save that and let's see what that looks like, and I don't see anything. Why is that? Well, that's because the navbar is an external component which is currently not rendered anywhere, and to render it we have two options. Either we render it right here in the page.tsx, which is the index page, or we render it in the layout file. So if you didn't know the difference, the page.tsx is the index page, so this is just what you see right here. The layout file is what actually wraps all of the routes. So the page.tsx is, again, as I said, the index page, but if we would now create a child route, I don't know, ABC, this would be a new route, then this would be actually right here rendered inside of this children. So the layout is actually, I guess, the base file or the base layout which wraps all of the routes. So what I want to do is actually render the navbar above all the routes, and for that I can render it above the children. So right here in the body element, let me now get my navbar component from our components. This is self-closing, let's save that, let's go back, and now you see hello from the navbar. If I would now, for example, render it under the children, you would now see hello from the navbar under the index page. Let me now again paste it above, since I want to have the navbar on the top, and yes, this looks quite cool. So what I think we should do now is actually get started with styling it. So it does not look that nice, and I want to make it actually look good. So let's actually get started with that. To get started, let me delete this whole return statement. Let's create a new one. Let's return a nav element, and let me get started with styling it. So let's create a class name. Let's right here say max width of 7XL. If you now hover over it, you will see that this is 1280 pixels. Let's now also do an mx of auto to center that. Let's do a padding x of 4, and on medium devices a padding x of 8. If you now save that and go back, you will now see actually nothing. That's because I currently don't say anything. So in the nav, let's just say h1 hello again. Let's save that, and if I now go back, you now see we have a bit of padding to the left side, and this looks way nicer than when this text touches the border. So let's right here continue. Let's also do in padding y, so on the y axis. Let's do in padding y of 5, and now you will see we have a bit of padding to the top and the bottom. What we have to do now right here is also give it in grid. So I want to actually right here create a layout. So let's do in grid. Let's also do in grid, which will be calls of 12, and then I think this should already be enough. Then right here inside of here, let me delete the h1. Let's create a div element, and let's give it a class name. So on mobile devices, it will take half of the screen. So let's do in call span, which will be 6. Let's do in flex, and on medium devices, this will be a call span of 3. So not 2, but 3. Then inside of here, let me now render the link component from next/link. And now you might ask me, what's the difference between a link component and a normal A tag as you know it, or the A element? So for that, let's head over to Nextjs.14. Let's search for right here link. And then right here you will see that, let me zoom in a bit, link is a React component that extends the HTML element to provide prefetching and client-side navigation. So this is quite important. First of all, client-side navigation is a great UX feature, and then prefetching is quite important when you use server components, because you have an instant navigation since everything is prefetched in the background, which is quite cool. So let me delete the A tag, we don't need that, and you already see that the link component is currently actually throwing an error. So the error is property href is missing, so let's actually give it one. Let's give it an href, and this will just be the index page, so an empty slash. Inside of here, let me now render an h1, and let's just say Jan Marshall. Let's save that, let's again go back, let me close right here the docs, and now you see Jan Marshall. If you hover over it, you see on the bottom left corner, it currently links to the index page, so the link component is working. Now it does not look that nice, so let's start styling that. Let me go to the H1, let's get in class name, let's say text, which will be 2XL, and let's do in font, which will be semi-bold. Let's save that, let's go back, and yes, this looks quite cool, but let's actually make this Marshall a bit of a different color. For that, let me actually wrap Marshall in a span, let's paste that back, and let's right here give it a class name of text blue 500. Let's save that, let's again go back, and yeah, I think this actually looks quite cool. One thing I think we maybe could do is make it a bit bigger, so instead of 2XL, let's do a text of 3XL. Let's go back, and yeah, I think we should leave it like that. I think this is quite cool. So if you can now remember, on the left side we want to have the logo, which we now created. In the middle I want to render the nav links, so 3 in total, the index page, the guestbook page, and then the projects page. And then on the right side I will probably render like a contact button. So what I want to do now is actually go to ui.shadcn.com. This is a styled component library which is also accessible. So it builds on Redux UI, and Redux UI is accessible but not styled, and shadcn UI takes all of these primitives or all of these components and actually makes them nice. So it styles them and makes it very easy to also style it yourself, or in other words customize it. So we will actually use that for a few components like the button component, or for example the card component as you see it right here, and just in general it's a quite cool experience when you use it. Also we'll use right here the themes to actually have a nice design system, but now let's actually get started. I think you already know enough about that. So let me click on installation right here, let's click on Next.js, and then we have right here a quick start guide. Now the first thing is create a project. We already did that, we already have a Next.js project as you see right here. So let's go to the second step and actually run the CLI. I will copy right here the npm script. Let me open my terminal. Let me right here open with the plus a new terminal tab. And then let me just paste right here this installation command. You now see that this CLI will ask me a few questions. So we'll use the default style, we'll use the base color slate, and then we'll use CSS variables. And now everything will be initialized. Alright, so the CLI is done, and if I now close that, open my Explorer, let me close everything right here, you will see we have now two files. So first of all we have the components.json file, this is needed for shadcn. Then we also now have a lib folder with an utils file for our cn helper, so for our class name helper. And then also in the package.json file we have now a few more packages, like for example class variance authority or CLSX, or which is quite cool, Lucid React. And Lucid React is an icon library. It's very easy to use, very cool, and I also use it for my personal project. So what we can do is actually visit the site to see how that looks like. So these are the icons which are already installed, and as I said, I also use them in my personal projects and they are quite cool. So let's again go back, let's actually now get started and use everything. And what I want to now install from shadcn UI is actually the navigation menu. So let's search for navigation menu, and that's what I want right here. So let's right here install the navigation menu. Let me copy the installation command. Let's use npm. Let me open the terminal and paste that. So this has now been installed, and now we can actually get started using that. For that, let me close my terminal. Let's go under the link component and under the div, so above the nav element. And then inside of here, let me create a new div element. This will be right here hidden. Then on small devices, it will be flex. Let's also do a justify, which will be center, items of center to actually center that. And let's do a call span of 6. Then inside of here, let's now actually get started with rendering our actual menu. For that, let me get the navigation menu. This is imported from the components. Now it's very important that you import it from the components and not from Redux UI. If you import anything from Redux UI, you will get a webpack error. You don't want that. So please listen to me. Please use the components right here. Don't import it from Redux UI, but from the components. Okay, let me now actually import that. Let's open that. And then right here, we'll inside of here have the navigation menu list. So this is very important. Let me get the navigation menu list from our components. Let's open that. And then inside of here, I want to now render our actual links. Now I could actually just create them separately right here and render them, but let's just create a simple array. So above our export function, let's right here just do a const or an export, I guess, export const navigation items, and then let me just open an array, and then inside of here we'll have multiple objects. Let's get started with the first one. We'll have a name, this will just be home, and then let's write here do an href, and this will just be an empty slash. Let's create another object or another link, in other words. Let's give it a name, this will just be right here Guestbook, and then let's also do right here an href, and this will be /guestbook. Let's now create another right here object or another link, and let's also give right here name, this will just be projects, and let's also do an href, and this will be /projects. Let's now save that. We can now actually get started using it right here. So what I'll do is first of all map over it. So right here, let's get our navigation items. Let's do an .map, and then let's do an item right here. Let's also get an index, and then let me just return that. Inside of here, let me now get the navigation menu item. Now again, very important, please import it from the components, and then let me just open that. Now you see we currently get an error, and right here it will tell me that I'm missing a key prop element in iterator. So if you use React, you have to actually always pass a key or a unique identifier as a key, so that actually React does not throw any hydration errors. So let me right here give it a key, and this will be index, and now I can save that. Okay, so now we can actually get started using that. So inside of here, let me use the link component from next/link. We already imported that, so let me open that. Let's give the link component right here an href, and this will just be item.href. And as you already know, we already stored that right here. So for the href, we already passed all the values. That's why I can use it right here. And then it's also very important that you now add another thing, and that's right here actually legacy behavior. So legacy behavior and pass href. Now why do we need to do that? So if you go to ui.shadcn.com and scroll down a bit, you right here see link component. So when using the Nextjs link component, you can use navigation menu trigger style to apply the correct style to trigger. So for that we have to right here pass legacy behavior, pass href, and then also right here later on navigation menu trigger style. So let's do that right now. Let me open the link component, and then inside of here, let me get the navigation menu item, and let me just open that. So right here, what I have to do now is give it in class name, and this right here will be equal to navigation menu trigger style imported from our components. Let me now invoke that, and now this already should be everything. So let's now render our item.name. So let me save that. Let's again go back. Let me go to localhost 3000. And as you see, we get an error. So I probably did a mistake, and I probably imported something from Redux UI. So let's check that. So I imported everything from components. So I don't really see an error. What could be wrong? Let me see. Yeah, I don't see anything. Let me again open right here my terminal. Let's see what it says right here. Webpack error, is not a function. So I'm currently not quite sure what the error is. Let me again save that. Let's refresh the page. So yeah, let me right here search for the error. So I'm right here looking at the code. We have the navigation menu list. We map over everything. And then we have the item, the link, and then we again have an item. So this is incorrect. So let me right here say navigation menu link, and this is imported from our components. So let me now save that. This should now work. And let's see. Nope, we still get an error. So what's the error? And the error is right here that we actually invoke navigation menu trigger style. And for that, we actually have to mark it right here as use client. So we have to mark the component as use client. And if I now save that and go back, you will now see that the error will be actually go away. And the error has actually happened because this navigation menu or trigger style actually right here relies on the client side. So that's why I have to mark this component as use client. And now you see everything works. Cool. So now we have right here our navbar. You see this little hover style, and just in general, this looks quite nice. Now, one thing you see is currently we are on the index page, but it does not show an active state. So what I want to do is actually right here show an active state if the actual href, or the URL corresponds to the current nav link. So what we can do right here is for the navigation menu link, we can right here get an active state, and then this is currently in Boolean. So what I want to do is if our actual URL corresponds to our href, then I want to actually give it a true value. So what you have to do is first of all get our path name. So for that, let's write here doing constant. This will be path name, and this will be then equal to use path name imported from next/navigation. Then right here for the active state, we can now just say if location, or not location, but if path name is equal to item.href, then we'll have a true value. So let's save that, let's go back, and now you see that this home tab right here has like a little background color. If I would now click on Guestbook, you would see we get in 404 not found, but still you see that this actually works. So let me again go back, this looks quite cool, and now on the right side I want to have like a little contact us button. To create a contact button, what we have to do is go under the navigation menu, under the div, and then inside of here let me create a new div element. Let's right here give it a class name which will be flex, items which will be center, and let's also do a justify of end to actually align it at the end of the screen, so on the right side. Let's also right here do an MD of call which will be span of we, so on medium devices a span of we, and if we are on a mobile device, let's do call span of 6. Now, if you're new to the grid layout, you probably don't really understand what I do with this call span 3 or call span 6. So let me try to show it to you. So let's imagine this is our navbar, right? And if you can remember right here where I created the navbar, so this nav element, I gave it a grid calls of 12. So what you can try to imagine right here is that we have now 12 columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So 12 in total. And then right here you'll see that I gave for my navbar, not for my navbar, but for my logo, a call span of 6 on mobile devices. So on mobile devices, this navbar will take 1/2 of the width. And then right here at the end where we have the contact us button, this will also take 1/2 of the screen. That's on mobile devices. But if we're on a desktop screen as we are right now, you'll see that I'll give for the logo, for example, a call span of 3. That means that, for example, the logo will take so much width. Then we have our nav links. This has a call span of 6. So this will take right here like 40% or something like that. And then right here we again have a call span of 3. So this will again take this amount of space, so a bit smaller. So the middle right here will take the most since this has a call span of 6. And the left and right corners will have a call span of 3. So a bit of a smaller width. So I hope you now understand what I mean when I create these call span. This is just a technique to create a layout. So again, as I said, we have on the left and the right side a bit of a smaller width, and then in the middle we have the double width of the left and the right corner. Okay, so I think you now understand what I mean with the grid layout. So right here we can now create our contact button. So let me just create for now a standard button, and for that I want to use the button component. So let's go to ui.shadcn.com, let's search for the button component, and then let me just copy the installation command, let's open the terminal, and then let me install the button right here. Alright, the button is now installed, so let's actually right here import that now from the components, and then inside of here let's just say contact us, or not contact us but contact me. Let's now save that, let's see how that looks like, and yeah, I think that looks alright. So on desktop we now have our logo, we have the nav links, and then also the contact me button. Let's see how it looks like on mobile. So I will now open a mobile device, like let's say right here what you have, an iPhone, and yeah, it's alright. But what I think I want to do is actually hide the button on the mobile screen, and instead of showing the button, I want to show a mobile menu so that I can actually click the links. So what we'll do right here is for the button, actually give it a class name, say hidden, and then on smaller devices, this will be off block. Let's now save that, let's go back, and now you see it's hidden, but if I go to a desktop screen, you again see the button. So what I want to do now is actually render a mobile menu, so which actually pops up, and then you see all of the nav links. For that, let's go back to ui.shadcn.com, and there we have the sheet component, and you see if I click on open, this is how it will look like, and that's what I want. So let me right here install that, let's use right here npm, let's open the terminal, let me go to the second terminal tab, let me paste that, and then this will be now installed. What I'll do right here is also create a separate component, so let me actually go to the app folder, then in the app folder, in the components folder, and let's just right here create a mobile menu, let me do it uppercase, .tsx. So inside of here, let's do an export function. This will be mobile menu. Let's invoke that, and then let me just open that. Let's right here now actually get started. So let's do a return statement. Let's right here get the sheet. The sheet is imported from the components. Let me right here open that. Then let's right here also create a sheet trigger. This is again imported from the components. And then let's also right here give it a property which is as child. And then right here, let me now get the button. This is again imported from the components. And then inside of here, I want to render like the menu icon as you know it. So the 3 bars which are stacked vertically. For that, we'll use the Lucid React icon, which is called menu. So let me import that. Let's right here also give it a class name. So let's do a height of 4 and a width of 4. And then let me also give the button a few properties. So let's give it a variant. The variant will be outline. And let's also right here give it in size. And the size will be icon. Let's save that. Let's see how that looks like. So I will go back to our page and you don't see anything. Why again is that? Well, that's because we have a separate component which is not rendered anywhere. So what we'll do is under the button, let me create a div, and then inside of this div, let me import the mobile menu component from our components. Let's save that, let's again go back, and now we should see a mobile menu right here in a second. And that's what you see right here, so we have now this button with the 3 bars, and if we click on it, you see nothing happens. But the nice thing is already that we see that we have a button, so this works. But one thing you will see is if I now go back to the desktop screen, we have now 2 buttons. We have now the contact me button, and we have the mobile button. I of course don't want that, so what we'll do right here for the div, is give it a class name and say on SM or bigger, let's just do hidden. Let's save that, let's again go back, and now this should not be there anymore, and this looks quite good. So now let's actually create a mobile menu so that we actually see the links. For that we will go under the sheet trigger, and let's right here get the sheet content from our components. Let me open that. Inside of here let me render div. And then let's also go right here in class name, which will be margin top of 5. Let's do in flex, let's do in padding x of 2, and let's do in space 1 of, let's just say 1. Let's also do in flex call, since I want to actually stack the items vertically. Now inside of here, I want to render over our navigation items, so over our links. For that, as you know, we already created an array right here, so we have the navigation items array, so I can use it right here. So let me get the navigation items array from our navbar, then let's do dot map, and let me right here just get the item, the index, and then let me just open that right here, or return that in other words. Let's now inside of here use the link component from next/link. Let's give it a key prop to prevent any hydration errors. For the key, I will just say index. Then let me also right here give it an href. This will just be item.href. And then inside of the link, let me right now just render our item.name. Let's now save that. Let's see how that looks like. So let me go back to the mobile menu. And if I now click on that, we should now see it. And yes, that's how it looks like. I think it looks actually quite cool in my opinion. But nevertheless, we still have to style the individual links. To do that, we will right here have to create a class name first of all, and then let's use our cn helper. So let me right here get our cn. So cn is imported from our lib folder. Let's right here open that. And then inside of here, what I want to do now is actually check if the item.href, which is passed right here, if it's actually equal to the current URL. So if the URL is localhost 3000, so the index page, I want that the home link right here has a background, that you see that this is currently active. So let me first of all get the path name. For that, let's do constant. Let's say location. This will be equal to use path name imported from next/navigation. And then right here in the cn helper, I can just say if location right here is equal to item.href. Let's right here just use internally. Then we'll right here just say bg of muted. If not, let's use a colon. Let's right here just return hover, which will be bg of muted. Let's right here also give it an hover, which will be bg opacity of, let's say, what does look good? I think 75 is fine. What we can do also right here is in comma, so that we can actually style both of these states. So let's right here do in group, let's do in flex. Then let's right here also do an items, which will be center. Let's also do padding x of 2, padding y of 2, text, which will be small, font, which will be medium, and then a rounded, which will be medium. Let's save that. Let's see if that looks good. So I will again open our mobile menu. And as you see, the home link has now its individual, I guess, background, so that you see that it's currently actually active. Now, one thing we could do is maybe make the text a bit bigger or a bit more bold. So right here we have a font medium. We could say font semi-bold. And instead of text as M, let's do a text of MD. Let's again go back. Yeah, I think this looks quite good. I think I will leave it like that. I don't think we have to change that. The last thing I want to do is on the bottom right here have like a close button. So let's go under this div where we map over our navigation items. Let me then right here get the sheet footer, again imported from our components. Let's open that. Let's right here also give it already a class name of margin top 5 so that I have a bit of spacing to the top. And then inside of here, let me get the sheet close again from our components. Let's right here give it an as child because inside of there I want to render a button. And let me get the button component, which is already imported. Let's right here just say close. and let's also go to right here and type, and the button type will just be submit. Let's save that, let's see if that looks good, and yes, this looks quite cool. Let me click on close right here, it closes, I can again open that, close it, so you see this fully works and this is great. So I would actually say we are done with the mobile menu, or just in general with the navbar. I don't see anything which we have to add, so what I think we can do now is actually get started with the guestbook. I think the guestbook is quite interesting, and I think we should get started with the guestbook, then create the projects and then the homepage. So let's do that right now. So to create a guestbook, what we have to do is go right here in the app folder, and we have to create a new route. So what we have to do is create a new folder, we'll name it guestbook, and then in the guestbook we have to create a page.tsx. So we always have to create a page.tsx to create a new route. Inside of here, since this is now a route, we have to do an export default. So let's do an export, default function, let's just name it, I don't know, guestbook page. And then let me just open that right here. What I can do now is create a return statement. Let's do div, let's say h1, and let's say hello from the guestbook page. Let's save that, let's see if that works. So I will now click on guestbook. We should now have a background color. That's what you see right here. And we are now at /guestbook, and we see hello from the guestbook page. Let's see how it looks like on mobile. So I will click on the mobile menu, and you see again right here in background color, and this also looks good. So let me close that. Let's again go to full screen, and I think we should now get started. So what we have to do, first of all, let me delete the div right here. Let's create a section element. Let me right here give it a class name. This will be again max width of 7XL, W of full, padding X of 4, medium, so let's do an MD of padding X8, and then let's also just say, I don't know, MX of auto. Let's save that. Inside of the section, let me create an H1, and let's say guest book. Let's save that, let's go back. Yeah, it looks good. We have now a bit of padding, which is what we wanted. But of course, guestbook has to be a bit more bold and a bit more bigger. So let me style the H1. Let's go in class name. This will be text of 4XL. Font, which will be semi-bold. Let's also right here do on larger devices a text, which will be 5XL, and a padding top of 5. Let's see how that looks like. Yeah, this looks quite cool in my opinion. Now I want to also have like a small p tag right here, which will just say like sign my guestbook. So under the H1, let's create a p tag, and let's just say sign my guestbook exclamation mark. Let's save that. Let's go back. Yeah, I think this should have a grayish color, and maybe it should be a bit bigger. So let me give it right here in class name. Let's do class name. Let's say leading of 7. Now leading will just give it a bit of a bigger line height. Let's also do right here in text muted of foreground. And then let's also do a margin top of 2. Let's save that. Let's go back. Yeah, I think this is fine. I don't think we have to change it. I will leave it like that. I like it. What I want to do now is render right here the card component, and then inside of the card component, we'll render the input and then also the individual guestbook entries. So let's first of all install our card component. So let's go to shadcn UI. Let's search for the card component, and let me right here go to the installation command, copy that, also the npm script, open my terminal, paste that, and let's install the card. So this is now installed. So what I can do now is go under the p tag and use it. So let me right here get the card component. The card component is imported from the components. Let me also right here give it a class name. This will be margin top of 10. And then inside of here, I can use the card header. The card header just gives it a bit of padding to the top, bottom, right, and left corner. Let me also give it right here in class name. This will just be flex of call to align it vertically, and W of full. Then inside of here, I want to now render a label. So let me again go to shadcn UI. Let's search for a label right here. Let me copy the installation command. Let's go back and just paste it to actually install it. Then once the label is installed, I can now use it. So let me get the label from the components, and let's right here just say message. Let's save that. Let's see how that looks like. So now you see we right here have now our card component with the label message. Now right here I have an plus. I think I did something not right. So I have an plus. Let me delete that. I don't need that. Let's again go back. Yes, this looks quite cool. So what I want to do now is we have this label, and what I want to do under the label is render the input as I already said. So what we have to do is first of all install the input. So let me right here get our input. Then let's right here copy the installation command with npm. Let's open the terminal and paste that so that we can use it. Alright, now before we actually continue with our form, there's one very important thing which I haven't mentioned. So right here we have our navbar, right? We mark it as use client, and then right here we import our mobile menu. Now our mobile menu is a component as you know it, and right here we use the use path name hook provided by Next.js. Now there's one very important thing. Now this use path name hook relies on the client side. So in theory we should mark this component as use client. Now I did not do that. Why is that? So since the navbar is already marked as use client, I don't have to mark this mobile menu again as use client because I guess it's already on the client side. I hope you understand that. So this component can't be in server component. It can only be in client component, and that's why I don't have to mark it again separately as use client. Now I could do that, nothing would change. I will do it right now just to see clearly that this is a client component, but again it really does not make any difference if you mark it use client or not. Another thing which is quite important is if you now go back to our page, go to the mobile side right here. Let me maybe zoom in a bit, so let's say 150%, and let's say I will now try to go to the home page. I will click on that. You see in the background we had a route change, but this sheet does not close. What I want to do is that this sheet automatically closes when I change a route. So what we have to do right here is actually do a use effect. So right here under this const location, let's do a use effect. This use effect is imported from React. Let me right here just open that. So let's do an open, and then right here we will have to add a dependency. Right now I'll just add an empty array, but later on we'll change that. So what I want to do right here is just set this sheet to close. How will we do that? So for that we'll have to create separate state. So let's do a constant. We'll have a getter and setter. So this will be open and set open, and then this will be equal to use state, and the initial state will be false. Then for the sheet we'll have to give it two properties. So first of all, the sheet will be open when open is true, and then also let's do an onOpen change, and then this is an arrow function. Right here as a param we get the state, and then right here we can say set open will just be equal to state, so we'll pass state as an argument. Cool. So what I can do now for the use effect right here is say set open, which will be false, and then as a dependency I will add the location. So because I added the location as a dependency right here, it tells the use effect to only run when the location changes. So if I now go back and let's say I will again go to the guestbook, you see this again closes. I can go to the home, it again closes. So you see this works quite good, and this is what I actually wanted. Great, so this is done. I think we can actually now close that, and I think we can now get started with our guestbook form. Now we could actually create the form right here under the label. I guess this would work, but we won't do it like that. We'll do something else, and this is quite important. So what we'll do right now is break the form actually into a separate component. And instead of creating a new component, let's do it right here. So we'll do right here a function. So let's do function. Let's say guestbook, let me spell guestbook correctly, guestbook form, let's invoke that, let's open that, and then right here what I want to do is actually do an if check. So I want to check if the user is authenticated. I will actually show the correct form so that the user can create an entry, and if the user is not authenticated, what I want to do is actually render a form so when the user clicks to actually send, I guess, the message, so that he will first of all actually get redirected to authenticate, and then he will actually be able to create the form book entry or the guest book entry. So what I'll do right now is just a dummy state, so we can do a constant user, and for now this will just be false, so we'll just say that the user currently is not authenticated. Then we'll do an if check and say if there's user, then we'll right here just return something. For now let's just say diff and h1 hello. And then if this is not true, so if we don't have a user, let's create a new return statement. Let's right here return a diff. Let's give it right here also a class name. This will be flex, justify, which will be between. Then let's also do a gap, which will be 4. Let's do flex, which will be call. And then on the medium devices or bigger, so on devices which have a minimum width of 768 pixels, let's just do a flex of row to align them horizontally. Then inside of here, let me now render our input component, which we actually installed. So let me import that from our components. This is self-closing. Then inside of here, what I can now do is give it a type. This will be of type text. We can give it also a placeholder, and we'll just say, I don't know, your message, SS message ... And then let's also right here now render a button. So let me get the button component, again imported from our components. And then inside of here, let's just say for now sign for, this should be lowercase, sign for free. Let's save that. Let's see how that looks like. And you don't see anything. Why is that? Well, that's because we currently have this component or this function, if you want to see it like that, and it's actually not rendered anywhere. So what we have to do is go under the label right here. We can now get our guestbook form component, not guestbook page, but guestbook form, and this is in self-closing tag. Let's save that, let's go back, and now you see the form right here. Now one thing I want to do right here is give it actually a bit of margin. So for the label, I can give it in class name, not class, but class name, and we can say margin bottom of 1. Let's save that, let's again go back. Yeah, I think this looks quite nice. We now have our input, we have the button, and if I click on the button, you see nothing happens. Now this is of course not quite what I want. What I want to do right here is if I click on this button, I want to get redirected to authenticate. And that's now where we come to the next step. The next step is to actually make authentication work. So what I want you to do right now is click on my YouTube description, click on the first link, and then let's actually head over to this website. So I'm now at Kinde, and Kinde is today's sponsor of this video and also a great authentication provider, which I already used for many projects, for YouTube projects, but also for my personal projects, and I quite love it. So what is actually Kinde, you might now ask me. So as already said, Kinde is an authentication provider which makes auth very, very easy. So they offer everything from standard password plus email auth to actually social auth with, for example, Google, Facebook or Slack and more. Enterprise single sign-on, which is quite important for a B2B context, multi-factor auth, which is also an advanced feature, which is not that easy to create yourself, machine-to-machine learning, and many more features. One feature which I personally love and have never seen with any other provider is, for example, feature flags. So let's imagine the following: you build a beta feature which you only want to roll out for a few customers so they can actually test it out and give you feedback. You select the users which you want to give the feature, they test it out, give you actually feedback, and then you can actually roll it out to all users. Another thing which actually Kinde offers and is also quite important in a B2B context is organizations. It's not as easy to create yourself, so it's great that Kinde actually offers that out of the box. Also, what is great with Kinde is pricing. Actually, Kinde is free for us up to 10,500 users, and not only 10,500 users, but actually 10,500 free users, as you see right here. So yeah, I think we should now actually get started with Kinde. As already said, they are a great provider. I have been using them extensively already for many months, and now thanks Kinde for sponsoring this video, and now let's get started. So if you already have an account, click on sign in. If not, click on start for free, but since I already have an account, let me click on sign in. Alright, I'm now in the Kinde dashboard. I'm already right here in a project, or as they call it, in a business. Let me zoom in a bit. But what I'll do right here is click on businesses and click on switch business, since I of course want to create a new business. Now you see all of the projects which are already created with Kinde. So let me right here click on add business, since I want to create a new project. Then we have to give it a name. I will just call it portfolio YouTube. And then number of employees is fine, and for the region I will choose USA, since I will also later on deploy the whole application to the US region. So let me now click on save. This will now take a bit, so let's wait for that. So as you see, my business has been successfully created. So now where do we have it? Right here we have now my portfolio YouTube. Let me click right here on the link. Now right here we have now a few questions. So first of all, I want to use Kinde with my existing code base. Let me click on next. Then right here for the tag, let me again zoom in a bit for you guys. I want to use right here Next.js. So where do we have it? We have it right here. Let's click on next. Then how will we allow our users to sign in? So let's use email, let's use Facebook, and let's of course actually use GitHub. So where do we have it? Right here. I think that's just fine. Email, GitHub, Facebook. Yeah, I think this looks good. And now you see we are already done. So now we are in the dashboard. Right here I'll click on no thanks. I'll explore at my own pace. And as you see right here, we have 0 users. This is fine. Again, we haven't implemented Kinde right now, but we already see that our project is now created, and now we can actually get started. So right here on the top right corner, let's click on docs, and then we are now in the main docs. So the SDK which we need is the Nextjs SDK, so let me click on that, and now we can actually get started. So the first thing which we need is the actual Kinde package, so I'll install that with npm. Let's open the terminal. Let me actually paste that to install it. Let's see what the next step is. The next step is to set callback URLs. So in our Kinde dashboard, we have to go to our settings and then check our callback URL. So what I can do right here is click on view details for my application. And then right here, you should now see that we now have right here callback URLs. So we have an allowed callback URL and we have an allowed logout redirect URL. Now, as you see, these callback URLs already actually created correctly, so we don't have to add anything. The next step right here is to configure our environment variables. So I'll just copy them right here. Then we have to now create an env file. So let me actually close everything or collapse everything. Let's create a .env file in our root folder and let me paste that. So these environment variables are quite important for Kinde to work. So what we right here paste is then later on the Kinde client ID, the client secret, the issuer URL. So right here the domain which we created. Then we of course also have the Kinde post logout redirect URL. So where we want to redirect the user after logging out. And then also actually the Kinde post login redirect URL. So where we will actually redirect the user after logging in. So what we have to do now is actually propagate these values. So if you go back to the docs, they will tell you right here, replace the information in the example with your own information. So let's go back to our dashboard, and then right here we have, for example, already our domain. So let's copy that. This is right here our Kinde issuer URL. So let me paste it right here. Then let's get our Kinde client ID. Then let me paste it right here on the top, and let's get our secret. This is right here our client secret. I'll copy that and paste it also right here. And now this is already done. Now for the Kinde site URL, this is correct. We are on localhost 3000. For the redirect logout redirect URL, I'll leave it at localhost 3000. And then for the post login redirect URL, I'll redirect to the index page, so localhost 3000. Let's now save that. This should already be all. Let's go back to the docs. You will see that the next step is to set up an auth route handler. And before I do that, there's one important thing, and that's actually to add our env to the git ignore. And this right here tells Git which files it should ignore. So I don't want to actually post, or I don't want to actually, I guess, commit the env file to my GitHub repo. So what I'll do right here is under our .env local, let's just add .env. So with that, I have now told actually Git to not push or to not commit this file, and now it's safe. So the next step is to set up a Kinde auth route handler. For that, we have to create first of all an API folder, auth folder, Kinde auth folder, and then a route.ts file. So let me go back. Let's open the Explorer. Let's go in the app folder. Let's create an API folder. Let's create an auth folder in the API folder. And then inside of the auth folder, we have to now create this Kinde auth in brackets. So I will just copy that. And then let's create a new folder. And then in the Kinde auth folder, we have to create a route.ts file. So this Kinde auth folder, I guess, will at the end of the day be in route handler. And route handler is a different word from API route. So to create an API route, you always have to name it route.ts. You can't name it, I don't know, core.ts or hello.ts. It always has to have the same naming convention. So now inside of here, let's create our route.ts, so route.ts, and then right here we can now actually paste this. So I will copy that and paste it inside of here. So now we have actually initialized Kinde. Everything should now be done, or at least the backend logic. And now we can actually start with actually authenticating the user. For that, we actually just need two simple components, or actually just one, and that's the register link component. So what I can actually do for now is close everything, go back to our guestbook page. So our guestbook page is right here. And then what I want to do inside of here is when the user clicks on this button, which is sign for free, I want to redirect the user to Kinde to actually authenticate. So what I can do right here is copy this button. Please copy it, don't delete it. And I can wrap it in a register link component. Now this register link component is actually right here imported not correctly. So currently it's imported from @kindeoss/kindeof Next.js. This is not correct. It should be right here imported from /components at the end. So let's right here do /components, and now this should actually work. So I guess we should now test out if everything looks good. So let me go back. Let's go right here to our page, and let me right here click on sign for free. I should now get redirected to Kinde, and let's see if this actually works. And yes, as you see, great, this fully worked. We got redirected to Kinde. I can now either right here authenticate with email, or I could use GitHub or Facebook. So let's test it out. Let me right here use GitHub. And as you see, I now got redirected to localhost 3000, our index page. Let me now click back on our guestbook. And as you see, you still see the old form. Well, why is that? Well, as you see right here, we currently hard-coded the user state. So instead of hard-coding it, we can now actually get the actual state through Kinde. So instead of using that, let me now delete that. Let's do a constant, let's destructure it, and this will be equal to get kind server session, and let me invoke that. The import right here is from @kindoss/kind of Next.js/server. Then right here, let me now destructure the get user function, and let's fetch our user. So let me right here do a constant user, and this will be equal to await get user. Now currently we get one error, and right here the error is await expressions are only allowed within async functions. We already have a quick fix. Did you mean to mark this function as async? Yes, so to actually fetch the user, we have to mark this function as an async function, and now you see the error is gone. So now we can actually again save that. Let's go back, and now we see a message hello. And again, it's actually safe to mark this function as async because we are currently in a server component, and that means that all of this data is fetched in the server or on the server, which means nothing is actually leaked to the client. So since we now actually have a user, let's now create a form for the authenticated user. Now to do that, instead of doing everything inside of this return statement, I will actually create a separate component in our components folder. So let's go in the app folder, let's go in the components folder, and let's create a form.tsx. Now inside of here, let's create an export function. We'll name it form, and then let me just invoke it and open that. Now inside of here, let me create a return statement. Let's create a form element. For now, I will delete the action. I don't have one. And then for the form, let me actually give it right here in class name. For the class name, this will be flex, justify, which will be between, gap, which will be for, flex, which will be call, and then if we have a medium device or bigger, this will be flex of row. Then inside of the form, let me now render our input component from our components, and then inside of here, let's give it a type. This will be of type text. Let me also give it a name. The name will be message. Let's give it right here in max length. The max length will be 80 characters. Then let's also right here give it a min length. The min length will be 1 character. Let's give it a placeholder. Let's just say your message, SS, ... And let's also do required, so we have client-side actual validation. Okay, now this actually looks good. Let's save that, let's go back, and you don't see anything. Why is that? Well, that's currently because this component is not rendered anywhere. So instead of hard coding this div with an h1, let's delete that, and right here let's render our form, which is imported from our components. Let's save that, let's go back, and now you see right here the input, but we don't have any submit button. So let's actually create a submit button. Let's go back to our form. I will again create a separate function for that. So let's do a function. Let's just call it submit button. Let's invoke that. Let's open that. Then inside of here, let me create a return statement. And what I want to actually do right here is return a pending state. So to actually return a pending state, I first of all have to check if we are in a pending state. So if we are currently submitting the form. For that, Next.js has an actual handy hook. So we can do a constant, we can destructure it, and this will be equal to use form status. Now use form status is imported from React-Storm, and it's very important that you import use form status and not use form state. Both hooks have a different actual use case, so please make sure that you import that from use form status. Now inside of here we can now get our pending state, and now I will create an actual ternary. So let's write here doing return, let's return empty brackets, and then inside of here let's now use a ternary. So if pending is true, let's use a question mark, return something, and if pending is not true, let's return something else. Now if pending is true, for now let's just return a empty button component, and then if pending is not true, let's again get our button from our components, and let's right here say sign for free, so sign for free, and let's also give this button right here a type, which will just be submit. Let's save that. Let's also create the button when the pending is actually true. So let's right here give it in disabled state. I don't want the user to be able to submit if the button is currently actually active or if the form is active. Then inside of here, let me use the loader2 icon imported from Lucid React. Let me right here give it a class name of margin right 2, height of 4, width of 4, and let's also do an animate of spin. Then inside of here, let me just say please wait. And then I think this should be already all. So under this input, I can now render our submit button, and this is self-closing. Let's save that, let's go back, and now you'll see we'll get an error. Now why do we have an error? Well, that's because use form status actually requires the client side. So right here, if you go back, the error message right here tells us you are importing a component that needs use form status. It only works in a client component, but none of its parents are marked as use client. So they are server components by default. That means that that we actually have to mark this component as use client. So on top, let's go right here and just say use client. Let's save that, let's again go back, and now you will see that the error is actually gone. So now we have our input and our actual button which says sign for free. That looks great, so now I think we should actually make our form work, because if I now write something right here and click on sign for free, you see nothing happens. We just make a GET request, but this is not what we want. We want to make a POST request. So what we have to do right now is actually first of all set up a database so that we can store the actual messages and the users, and then we can display them right here. So let's head over to Supabase to create a new database. Alright, I'm now at supabase.com, and Supabase is an open source file-based alternative, and they offer a lot of stuff like, for example, a Postgres database, instant APIs, edge functions, real-time subscriptions, and many more things. But what we need from Supabase is the Postgres database. It's free to use, so let's actually use that. I'll right here click on sign in. If you don't have an account, click on start your project. But now let me actually first of all sign in. Alright, I'm now signed in into Supabase. I'm now in the dashboard, and as you see, I already have one project. So now let me right here click on top on new project. Let me click my organization and let me start. So I will have to give this project a name. So let's just say portfolio-YouTube. For the password, I will right here click on generate password and let me copy that. I'll right now also go to our env file and just paste it for now, just to have it stored. And then for the region, I'll choose West US and let me click on create new project. Alright, now Supabase will actually take a bit to initialize, so to initialize the whole actual database. And instead of waiting, let's already actually set up Prisma. So if you didn't know, Prisma is an ORM, or actually in TypeScript ORM, and we'll use it for this project. It's very easy to use, and that's why we'll use it actually. So what I have to do is open my terminal, then inside of here let me first of all clear everything. Let's do an npm i-capitalize D Prisma. Now right here we installed Prisma as a development dependency. That means that it won't show up in our production bundle size, which is great. And then once that is installed, we need one more package from Prisma. So let's do an npm i add prisma/client. Now this is just a standard package which will also actually show up in our production bundle size, but we needed to actually make everything work. So now this is actually installed. Let's do an npx prisma init to initialize Prisma, and then right here you will now see the next steps. So first of all, you already have a git ignore file. Don't forget to add .env, we already did that. And then the next step is to set a database URL, to set a provider, to run Prisma DB pull, and to run Prisma generate. So let's get started. So let me first of all close my terminal, and then right here in the env file, you now see that actually Prisma has generated something, and that's a database URL. Now this database URL is currently just a dummy, URL, so it does not really work, but we'll of course change that in a second with Supabase. Let me for now delete this comment, I don't need that. And if you now open the Explorer, you'll see right here that Prisma has also, for example, created the Prisma folder with the schema file, and then inside of the schema we'll store two actual models. So first of all, the model to store the user, and then also a model to store the guestbook form entry. So yeah, these are the two models which we will need for this project, and before we actually create them, let's first of all right here finish this procedure with Prisma. So we first of all have to create a connection to that Supabase so that this whole schema generation and everything can work. So as you see, we currently have a dummy database URL, and sadly creating the connection to Supabase with Prisma is not that easy. So what we need is an actual guide. So what I want you to do is go to Google and right here just write Prisma Supabase guide. And then right here, you'll see already the first link, Prisma works with Supabase. And then inside of here, you will now find a guide on how to actually set up Supabase with Prisma. So first of all, we now need two environment variables. So first of all, the database URL, but also the direct URL. So I'll right here copy that. Let me delete the old database URL and paste that. Now we'll have two URLs. So first of all, the database URL, which ends with 6543, and then also the actual right here direct URL, which will be right here 5432. So let me go back to our actual dashboard from Supabase. Let me click on settings. Let me click right here on database, and then right here on mode, let me click on transaction mode. Now this transaction mode right here is important. So let me copy that, and this is what we need for our database URL. Let me paste that right here. Now right here you see in brackets your password. So let me actually paste that. As you see, I already copied it right here. Let me copy that again. Let me right here paste that instead of your password. and now this looks good. Now one thing which is also quite important, if you check the guide right here, it will tell you right here, to do this, set the connection mode to transaction, we did that, and copy the connection string and append $BG bouncer true and connection limit 1. PG bouncer true disables Prisma from generating prepared statements. This is required since our connection pooler does not support prepared statements in transaction mode yet. The connection limit 1 parameter is only required if you're using Prisma from a serverless environment. We do both of that, so let me copy this right here, so $PG bouncer true and connection limit 1. I'll right here copy that and then let me append it right here at the end for our database URL. Then for the direct URL, let me head over to our dashboard again. Let me click on mode session and then let me again copy this URL and paste it right here. Now let me again copy our password and then let me right here change it for our actual password. So now this is done, you don't have to append anything right here at the end, so this looks good. Now one thing we also have to do is in the Prisma file, on the schema.prisma file, we also have to add our direct URL and our URL. So let me just copy this data source DB, let's go in our schema.prisma file, and then let me just, delete this data source DB and paste what I've just copied. So now I guess the actual connection to Supabase should be done. So let's just create a demo model. Let's just create a model, let's call it user, let's open that, and then inside of here let's just create an ID which will be of type string, @ID, @default, and UUID. Let's just see if that works. So I will open my terminal, let me clear everything, and let's do an npx prisma db of push, and let's see if our actual connection looks good. So as you see, our connection works, so our database is now in sync with our Prisma schema. So if I now go back to our dashboard right here, click on table editor, you will now see that we have one new model, and that's the user model. So since we now know that everything works, let's now start fresh. Let me delete it right here, and let's start from fresh again. Let's right here create an ID. This will be of type string, @ID, and this will be unique, so @unique. Now this ID will be actually brought by Kind, so I don't have to create my own unique identifier, but we'll just take the ID from Kind already. Then the user will also have an email, this will be of type string. The user will have a first name, this will be of type string. Then we will have a last name, this will again be type string, and the user will have a profile image, so let's do profile image, and then this will be of type string, and this could be not defined, so let's do a question mark at the end. Let's save that. Let's now also create a model for the guestbook entry. So let's do model, this will just be called guestbook entry, and let me just open that. Inside of here we'll have an ID of string, @ID, @default, UUID, and then inside of here, of course, each entry will have a message. So let's do a message of type string, and let's also do right here and create it at timestamp. This will be of type date time, @default now. So when the user, or I guess when a new field is created in our actual database table, we'll just create a new timestamp, and everything will be done automatically. Now the last thing which we have to do is actually create a connection between the user and the guestbook entry. So there are in total 3 relationships which you can create: a one-to-one relationship, a one-to-many relationship, and a many-to-many relationship. So what we need right here is actually a one-to-many relationship. So that means that each user can have multiple messages, but each message can only be associated with one user. So what we can do right here for our actual user model, and before I should continue, one thing which I forgot to mention is, if you want to have auto generation, please go to your extensions tab and install the Prisma extension. That's quite important, I forgot to mention that, but if you want to have the same experience, you have to have this installed. And now to actually make the one-to-many relationship work, it's actually quite simple. We can just right here say guestbook entry, and then this will just be equal to our guestbook entry model with an array sign appended. Let me click on save, and now we already have created automatically the one-to-many relationship. So as already said, the user can now have multiple guestbook entries, but each guestbook entry, or in other words, each message, can only have one user associated. Great, this looks good. Now let's actually sync our database with the schema. So let me clear that, and let's do an npx prisma db of push. And now we see we currently get one warning. There might be data loss when applying these changes. This is fine, so let me click on yes. We don't really have any data, so it does not really make any difference if some data is being lost. And now you see our database is now in sync with our Prisma schema, and that looks great. So let me now actually close that, and now we can actually get started to actually store first of all our user in the database, and then also store our actual message also in the database. So now, since our database is in sync with our Prisma schema, I think the first thing we should first of all do is actually make the functionality work that when I actually create a user model, or not a user model, but when a user I guess signs up, that we actually store the user in the database. So currently when a user signs up or authenticates, it isn't really stored in our database. So let's actually change that. Now to do that, there are actually a few ways you could do that, but one simple thing you could do is, for example, set up an API route, and that's exactly what we'll do right now. For that, we'll go right here in our Explorer, go in the app folder, and then right here in the auth folder, let me actually create a new folder, and then for the name, we'll just say creation. In this creation folder, let me create a route.ts, and now let's create the actual API route, or in other words, the route handler, to actually store the user in our database. So to do that, let's create an export async function. Let's do an uppercase get, and then let me just open that. Now you see I misspelled probably async, so let me spell that correctly, and now let's right here get started. So what we first of all have to do is actually fetch our user. So let's do a constant, let's do structured, and this will be equal to get kind server session. Let's invoke that, and then right here let me get my get user function. Let me now fetch our user, so let's do a constant user, and this will be equal to await get user, and let's invoke that. So what I want to do now is an if check. So if we don't have a user, or no user is defined, or we don't have a user ID, I want to throw an error. So let's try to do an if check, and let's add an exclamation mark, and with that we just say if there's no user, or with this double vertical line, if the user right here equals to null, or let's again use two vertical lines, if there's no user.id, let's right here just, I guess, throw a new error, and then we can just say, I don't know, something went wrong, ... You could of course write a better message, but I honestly don't think it makes that big of a difference, so we'll just leave it like that. So now, since we already know that we actually fetch a user, so everything looks good, we now first of all have to check if the user already exists in our database. So what we have to do right here is create and let, this will be equal to dbuser, or we'll have the name of dbuser, and now right here we have to fetch our actual data from Prisma. Now you will probably think it's quite simple, just to await Prisma, and then Prisma is imported from Prisma client. No, this is incorrect. This does not work like that. So what we can do is go to Google and let's just say Next.js Prisma best practices, and then what you'll see is that we actually have to initialize Prisma a bit differently with Next.js. So right here many users have come across this warning while working with Next.js. So the warning is warn Prisma client, there are already 10 instances of Prisma client actively running, and the problem right here is that in development the command nextdev clears Node.js cache on run. This in turn initializes a new Prisma client instance each time due to hot module reloading that creates a connection to the database. This can quickly exhaust the database connections as each Prisma client instance holds its own connection pool. So to actually fix this error, what we can do is actually in development, we can create a global Prisma file or a global Prisma client, and if we are in production, we just create our standard new Prisma client. So I will copy right here this code, let me open my Explorer, and then let me go in the app folder, let me create a new lib folder, and then inside of the lib folder, let me create a db.ts file. Inside of here, let me paste the code, and now again, what do I do right here? So what we do right here is just check if our app is not in production, we create our global Prisma file. If our actual application is a production environment, so if it's deployed to the web, we just create a new Prisma client. So it's pretty standard stuff. So I can now go back to my route.tsx, let me do an await, and now I can import Prisma from our lib folder. Again, it's very important that you now import that from lib and not from Prisma client. Cool, so let me now import that. Let's get our .user, let's do a .find unique since I want to find a unique user. Let's open that. We have to now create a where statement, and I want to find a unique user where the ID matches our user.id. Again, we already fetch our user right here, that's why we already right here get the user.id. So now we fetch our user from the database, and in total there could be only two responses. So either response A, there's no user, or response B, we have a user. So if we don't have a user, let's do an if check. So if there's no user, we add an exclamation mark, db user. If there is no db user, let's open that and let's reassign db user, and this will be now equal to await Prisma user.create, since we want to create a user in our database. Then right here, let's use the data property and let's pass our fields. So first of all, the ID, this will be equal to actually user.id. Then let's create the first name. This will be equal right here to user.givenName. If this is not defined, let's use nullish listen with a double question mark and just say empty string. Then let's also have our last name. This will be equal to user.familyname. If this is not defined again, let's use nullish listen and let's just do an empty string. Let's also right here get the email, and the email will just be right here equal to user.email. Again, if the email is not defined, let's use nullish listen and say empty string. And then the last thing which we need is the profile image, and this will be equal to user.picture. So now these are already all fields which we need. We don't need anything else, so we are done with that. And the last thing which I want to do is actually redirect the user from this API route to our actual route. So what I'll do right here is under this if dbuser check, let's right here do in return. Let's do a next response. This is right here imported from next/server.redirect. And now I want to redirect to our actual guestbook page. So let me again go back to our website. I'm now right here in my guestbook route. Let me just copy the URL, so localhost 3000/guestbook, and let's paste it right here. So what we did right here is create a route handler or an API route. In other words, we fetch our user from kind, we check if the user is defined, if not we throw an error, and then we right here query our database to check if our user is already stored in the database. If this is true, we just redirect the user back to our guestbook. If not, we create a user and then redirect the user back to the actual guestbook page. So our route handler is now done, and the last thing we have to do now is tell kind to redirect to this API route. So this is actually quite simple with kind. Let's open our env file, and right here where we have our kind post login redirect URL, instead of redirecting to localhost 3000, what we will say is redirect to /API/auth/creation. That's again because we right here have created an API folder with an auth folder as a child, and then right here in creation folder. So what we now did is right here told actually kind that when the user authenticates, kind should redirect the user right here to our API/auth/creation route, where we then check right here, as you see, if we already have a user in our database. Cool, this should now actually work, so I can actually close everything right here. Let me go to my kind dashboard, and what I'll do right here real quick is already delete my user which I created. So let me click right here real quick on users. Then right here you see the user. Let me right here now click on right here delete user, and then let's click on delete all data, and let's click on delete user. Cool, now this is deleted. Let's now test out if everything works. So right here, let me do /API/auth/logout to log out the user. Now this will actually log out the user. We now got redirected. Let me again click on guestbook, and then let me click right here on sign for free to actually authenticate again. I got now redirected to the kind website. Let me continue with GitHub. And now as you see, I got redirected to the guestbook page. Let's now see if our user is created in our database. So let me right here do an npx Prisma Studio to actually open our Prisma Studio. So what you see right here is now we have the user, and if I zoom in a bit, you see that in total we have now one actual field right here. So I have one user. Now I won't open that because I have my personal data inside of there, but again we now see that the connection actually works and that we actually store our user in the database. So I can now close Prisma Studio again. I can stop Prisma Studio. I don't need the dev server for that, and I can close my terminal. So we see that this is now done, and I think what we should do now is actually create the functionality so that I can create a guestbook entry. So let me again go back to our form component, and what I have to do now is create an action for our form. Now to create the actual action, there are now two ways to do that. Either A, you create a route handler as we did it right here with kind, or for example the creation route, or we can use a server action. Now if you don't know what the difference is between a route handler or server action, or when to use what, you can check out my member video where I already talked about that, where I talked when to use what. But what I think we should do in this video is use the server actions. Now to use server actions, what we have to do right here is actually create a separate file. Now why do we have to create a separate file? Well, that's because this right here component is marked as use client, and server actions only run on the server. So I can't actually use it right here because again, this is a client component and server actions only run on the server. So what we'll do right here is is open the Explorer, go in the app folder and create a new actions.ts file. Now right here at the top I will mark it as use server, and now we can actually start with our server action. Now to create our server action we actually have to create it almost the same as any async function. So let's right here just do an export async function. We'll just name it, I don't know, post data. Let me now open that. Right here with the params I can actually get the form data. So let's get the form data. This will be of type form data. And now inside of here the first thing which I want to do is actually check if the user is authenticated. So if the user is not authenticated we'll throw an error, and if the user is authenticated we'll just actually create a message. So let's write here doing constant, let's destructure it, and this will be equal to get kind server session. Let's invoke that. Then right here let me now get our user, so let's do get user. Let me now fetch the user, so let's do constant user equals to await get user. Let's invoke that, and then right here let's now do an if check. So if there's no user, let me right here just throw an error. So let's do throw a new error, and then I will just say for a message, I don't know, unauthorized. Now I think I misspelled that. Yeah, I misspelled that. I don't care, it's fine. I think everyone understands what I do right here. So if the user is not there, if we don't have a user, then I'll just throw an error. If we now have an authenticated user, I think we could now actually create a new record in our database. So for that, what we can do is in constant data, this will be equal to await prisma. Prisma is imported from the lib folder, .guestbook entry .create, since I want to create a new one. Inside of here we can now pass our data prop, and we have to pass two things. So I have to pass the message, and I also have to pass the user ID. Let's first of all pass the user ID. This will be actually equal to user.id, and now we also have to create the message. Now for the message you might ask me, how do I actually get the message from our front end right here to our back end? Well, for that we have our form data. So if I go back to my form, right here we have the input, and I want to get the actual message from this input. We gave it right here name of message, and what I can do now is actually go back to my actions file, and then inside of here I can do a constant message, and then this will be equal to form data.get, and then inside of here I want to get my message. So I get the actual message through the name, and again I also named my input message, and that's how I get the content from this input. So what I can do now right here, instead of just rendering or passing an empty string, I can pass my message. Now currently you see we get an error, and right here it tells me type form data entry value or null is not assignable to type string. So what I'll do right here at the end is just mark it as string. Now in a perfect environment I would say that you should also right here do a bit of validation, but since this is right here in free tutorial I will now not bother with validation. But again, if you have the time and if you want to dive into validation, please do that, it's actually quite important. So this is now done, and I think we can now actually test out if it works. So what I can do right here is go back to our form, give it right here an action, and then this action will be equal to post data, so our function or our server action, which is imported from our actions file. Let's now test out if everything works. I'm actually not sure. So let me go back, let me create a message, or let me first of all refresh the page. Let me now write some gibberish, and let me click on sign for free. We have now a nice pending state as you see, and now we don't see anything. Why is that? Well, first of all, quite simple. If you open our guestbook route right now, you see we don't even fetch the data, so we can't even see it right now. That's fine, we'll fix that in a second. Let's first of all see if the data actually is in our Prisma Studio. So let's again do an npx Prisma Studio and check if the guestbook entry actually exists in our database. So as you see right here, we now have our ID, we have the message, we have the created at timestamp, we have the connection to the user, so to me, so this actually fully worked. So since we now know that our actual guestbook entry is stored in our database, I think we should now actually start with actually fetching the data so that we can actually render the messages right here under the input. For that, I'm now again in my guestbook route, as you know it, and then above our export default function, let's right here create an async function. This will be called get guestbook entry, and then let me just open that. Then inside of here, let's start fetching. So let's use constant data. This will be equal to await prisma. Prisma is imported from the lib folder. .guestbook entry .find many, since I want to find many entries. Let me now open that. Inside of here, let's use a select statement, since I don't want to actually select everything. So let's open that, and then right here I want to get from the user, so not user ID but from the user. So let me open that. Let's again get the select, and I want to select the first name, so let's set it to true, and I want to get the profile image, so let's set it also to true. Then underneath the user, let me also get the message, and then let's also get the ID of the actual guestbook entry. The last thing which I want to do right here is an order by, and we'll just order by the created at timestamp, and let's say descending. When I say descending, I just tell Prisma right here that I want to get the newest actual entries at the top. The last thing which I will do also right here is say take 30, so we'll only take the most recent guestbook entries, and in total just 30. So if you for example have 100 guestbook entries, we will only take the most recent 30 entries. So let me now save that, and now this looks good. Alright, so we have now written our query, it looks nice, but of course it's currently a static query. That means that we currently don't fetch anything. Now in most cases you would now go inside of this function right here and do a constant data and then await get data, or in that case right here it will be await get guestbook entries. Now we will actually not right here get the data inside of this component, but we'll create a separate function again. Now you might ask me, hey Jan, why do you create so many functions? Why don't you just write everything in one function? Well, that's because we will later on actually add suspense boundaries, and for that I will need two separate functions. Now this might go over your head right now, that's fine, but for now let's just right now create a separate function. So let's right here just do an async function. Let's just name it, I don't know, guest book entries, and then let me just open that. I misspelled async, so let me spell that correctly, and then inside of here we can now actually get our data. So let's do constant data equals to await get guestbook entries. So let me invoke that, and now that looks good. Now you see, one thing I also forgot right here is we have to return our data. So let's right here also return our data, and now this async function get guestbook entries looks good. So now inside of this function let's actually now do something. Let's first of all do an if check if data.length is 0. So if we don't have any guestbook entries, let's just return null, so we'll return nothing. Then if we have guestbook entries, let's return something new, and then right here we'll just do data.map. Let's get an item, and then let me just return that. Inside of here, let's right here just create an li tag. Let's give it in key because we have to give it in key tag. This will just be the item.id, and then inside of here, let's create a div element. For the div, let me give it in class name. This will just be flex items, which will be center to center it vertically. And then inside of here, I want to now actually render two things. So first of all, the image of the actual user who created the guestbook entry, and then also like the p tag of the actual message. So let's first of all render the image tag. Let's right here already pass the source. The source will be right here the item.user.profile image. And then for the alt, I will just say, I don't know, I guess user profile image. I think this should be sufficient. Let's save that. You now see we currently get an error, and it tells me right here using image could result in lower LCP and higher bandwidth. Use image component, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I will click on quick fix. I will click right here on disable add next no image, so the second one right here. Now why do you don't use the Nextjs image component even though it has a lot of benefits? Well, that's actually quite simple. The profile image can come from multiple sources, and I'm not sure which URL will be, I guess, for the image. So I just want to use the image tag. I don't want to use the Nextjs image component. Let's right here also mark it as string, and now let's save that. Also, one thing I'll do for the image right here is also give it in class name, and this will be w of 10, h of 10, and then let's also do a rounded of, let's say, lg. Then let's now render the actual p tag with the message. So let's do p, and let's right here just get our item.message. Now before I actually style it any further, let's first of all test out if everything works. So to do that, first of all, we of course also have to render our component somewhere. So currently just an async function which does not render anywhere. So what we'll do is actually go under the guestbook form right here, create a UL tag, and then inside of here I will get my guestbook entries. Again, this is this component right here, or this function in other words, and now this should actually work. So let me again go back to localhost 3000, let me close the other tabs, and as you see right here, we already see my message. It looks not that nice, let's be honest, but at least we already see that, and that's already good enough. So let's actually start with styling it a bit. So for the UL, let's go right here in class name, padding top of 7 to have a bit of padding to the top because it's way too close to the input. Then let's right here also do a gap y of 5. flex, and then also flex of call to align it vertically. So that looks quite good. Let's now also style the p tag. It's a bit too close to the image, so let me go right here to the p tag and let's write here good in class name. And what I want to do right here is, let's say text, which will be muted or foreground, so this grayish color. Then let's also get a bit of padding to the left, so padding left of 3, and then let's also do break words. So if we have a bit of a too big sentence, I guess, that it breaks the words so that we don't actually go overflow of the container. So let's save that. Let's again go back. This should now already look a bit better. Yes, this looks quite cool. One thing I maybe also want to render is the actual name of the user. So what we'll do right here before the item.message, let us also get right here the item.user. What is it called? First name. Let's use a colon, and then let's right here render the item.message. Let's go back, and now you see Jan and then the actual message. What I think we should actually do right here is get the item.message actually and wrap it in a span. Then again, let me paste that and let's give it for the span a class name of text foreground. Let's again go back. This should now be again black and this should be grayish. Yes, this looks quite good and I think we leave it like that. So let's again try to create a new guestbook entry. So let me just say hello from the guest book and let me click sign for free. We have a nice pending state and yeah, where's the message? What happened? So there's two things which I don't like. So first of all, our input does not clear. I want our input to clear. And secondly, I don't see any message right here. If I refresh our page right here, you will see that the input will clear and we'll see 2 messages. So what do we have to do? Let's first of all do the first step, or I guess the second step, that we actually see the message, or the guestbook entry in other words. And for that we have to go in our actions file and we have to use one very simple function actually, and that's the revalidate path function provided by Next/cache. Now with this I can revalidate cache so that we actually see the message. So now we have to actually pass as an argument the path which we want to revalidate, and I want to revalidate the guestbook page. So let me save that, so /guestbook, that's right here this path. And if I now save that and write a new message, hey, does this revalidate? Let me click on sign for free. We have a pending state and now I should see the message right here, and you see right here, hey, does this revalidate? So now we have revalidated our cache and that's why we see the message right here. So let's now actually come to the step where we reset the form. So for that, let me go back to our form component, and thankfully it's again not that hard, it's quite simple, and all we have to do is actually use the useRef hook provided by React. So above the return statement, let's do a constant, let's do form ref, and this will be equal to useRef. UseRef is imported from React, and then the initial state is null. Also, we have to pass in generic right here because we'll get an error, or actually let me show it to you. So first of all, for the action, what we have to do now is right here, this will be an async arrow function. So let me right here just open this async arrow function. Inside of this param, let me get actually form data, and then what I can do inside of here is an await post data and pass my form data as an argument. So even though we have now actually changed the writing, or how we actually right here, I guess, call our server action, the whole logic behind it still is the same. So if I try to do right here, I don't know, hey, does this still work, and click on sign for free, you will still see we have a pending state and everything is still being revalidated, but we don't actually right here reset the form. For that we have to now actually use our form ref. So under our await post data once it runs, we can do in form ref right here, we get our form ref dot current, and then we have to call in dot reset. Now you see we don't get any TypeScript helper right here. So what we have to do right here is pass in generic, and then this will be an HTML form element. So I can now again go back and then let's do form ref dot current dot reset, and let's invoke that. Now before we actually continue, there's one more thing. For the form I have to now give it in ref, and the ref will be equal to form ref. So now in theory everything should work. So we have our form ref, then we right here call our server action, and once it runs we actually reset the form. So let's test it out. Let me hard refresh this page, and then we'll again create a nice message. So let's right here just say, hey, does this reset question mark, and click on sign for free. We have our pending state, our form resets, and we have our revalidation. So I personally would say that our guestbook is done. It works fully and exactly how we want it to. Now, one thing you will probably see is if I now click on home, let me just refresh the page again, hard refresh, click on Guestbook, you see it takes 1, 2, maybe 3 seconds to actually do the navigation. Now, this is, in my humble opinion, not a good UX benefit. So what I think we should do actually is stream right here the response. So what I mean with stream is actually that we have an instant navigation, have like a pending state, and then the data is streamed into, I guess, this page as it loads. Now, thankfully, since we broke everything into separate functions, or in other words, into separate components, it's actually not that hard to do. All we have to do is wrap everything in a suspense boundary and then just give it a pending, or I guess a loading state. So to do that, let's again go back to our right here guestbook page. And what I'll do right here is actually wrap our guestbook form in a suspense boundary and then our guestbook entries in a suspense boundary. So let's start with the guestbook form. I'll right here just copy that for now. Let's get right here the suspense. This is imported from React. Let's open that and then let's paste our guestbook form. Let's do the same for our guestbook entries. Let me copy that. Let me get our suspense boundary and let me paste our guestbook entries back. Now what we can do for our suspense, give it in fallback. Now with the fallback, I just tell React, hey, this is what you should do when you stream the response. So right here, let's just give it, I don't know, just in standard p tag, and let's say, hello, this is loading. And let's do the same for this right here. So let's give it in fallback and let's just say p tag, hello, this is loading. Let's save that and let's again go back. I will go to the home page, hard refresh, let me go to the guestbook, and now you see right here, hello, this is loading, and then you see the actual response. So this is what I mean with streaming. We stream the data, and while the data is streamed, we have a pending state. Now, does the pending state look good? Nope, it does not look good. So what we can do is go to ui.shadcn.com, and what we need from here is the skeleton. So we'll use the skeleton to make our whole loading state look nice. So let me copy the installation command, let's open the terminal and let me install the skeleton right here. Now for the skeleton, what I'll do is actually create a separate file. I don't want to create everything right here inside of this file. So let me open my Explorer right here. Let me go right here in the app folder, in the components folder, and let's create a loading, I guess, state.tsx. Now inside of here, let's actually now create something. So let's do right here an export function. Let's just call it, I don't know, loading, I guess messages. This should be fine. And let's open that. Then inside of here, let me create a return statement. And what we'll return right here is a div element. Let me also style that. So let's give it right here in class name of flex of call to align it vertically, and a gap y of 6. Then inside of here, let me create a div element. Let's actually right here give it in class name. This will just be flex, then items, which will be center. Let's do also width of full, and then space of x, which will be 4. So what I want to do right here is actually just mimic what we have right here in our guestbook form. So if I go back, where do we have it? We have our guestbook entries, and you see right here we have our flex, then we have the image, and then we have the text. So I want to actually do the same right here with our skeleton. So inside of here, I can now render our skeleton component from our components. This is self-closing. Let's get in class name, and this will be h of 10, and then also width of 10, and let's do rounded of lg. So this skeleton is pretty much the same as our image. Then under this div, let's render a new div right here. So let's right here give it in class name, and then this will just be space y of 2, flex, and flex of call. Inside of here, let me now render 2 skeletons. So let me get one skeleton and then let me copy paste it again. For the first skeleton, let me give it in class name. This will be h of 4, and then the width will be a custom value of 250 pixels. Now to create a custom value with Tailwind CSS, all you have to do is right here, use these array brackets. Then for the second skeleton right here, let me also give it in class name, and this will just be h of 4 and then width of 200 pixels. So this should be already all. I think we're done with that. And what I'll do right now is just copy paste the skeleton a few more times. So let me just copy paste it, and I think this should be enough. So what I can do now is go back to our page.tsx, and then right here for our guestbook entries, instead of doing in p tag, let me right here just get, how did I name it? I named it loading messages. So let me get our loading messages component. Let's save that. And then let's again go back and test it out. So let me go back to the home page. Let's do a hard refresh. And then let's go back to the guestbook. And yeah, I'm not sure. This does not look good. Let's see. Loading state. I added right here CLAS. I'm not sure why I did that. I really don't know. but let me delete that all real quick, and then this should already look way better. So I've now deleted that. Let's again go back to the home page. Let's do a hard refresh. Let's go to the guestbook, and yes, this already looks beautiful, and I will leave it just like that. Now what I will do also right here is add a pending state for this input actually, because why not? So let me again go back to our loading states, and right here let's just do an export function. Let's call it a guestbook form loading, and then let me just open that. Inside of here let's do a return statement, and then let's return a div. Let's give it right here a class name. This will be W or full, and then inside of here let me get a skeleton. This is self-closing. Let's get a class name of h10. Let's do a rounded, which will be LG, and let's do width or full. Let me now get that right here. Let's go to the page.tsx, and instead of rendering the p tag, let me actually render right here the component. Let me first of all import that, and now this should also look good. Let me go back. Let's go to the homepage, hard refresh. Let's go to the guestbook, and yeah, I think this is great. I don't think we have to change anything. I think we are pretty much done with the guestbook. Now let me again think about it. Is there anything we are missing? Let's see how it looks like on mobile. Is there anything we should change right here? Nope, I think this looks good. I honestly think we are done with our guestbook right now. So since we are now done with that, I think we should now continue with the projects tab right here, or the projects page in other words. So let's already get started without any further ado. So let's go in the app folder, let's create a new route or a new folder in other words. Let's just name it projects, and then inside of here, let's create a page.tsx. Then since this is in route, we have to do an export default function. So let's do an export default function. Let's just call it projects, let me spell that correctly, projects page, and let me just open that. Inside of here, let's do a return statement, let's do a div, and let's say h1, hello from the projects page. Let's save that, let's see how that looks like. I'll click now on projects, we see we get now redirected, and yes, this also fully works. So let's now actually get started with styling that and actually creating the backend logic for our projects. So let me first of all delete everything. We again don't need that. Let's create a new div element, or we could actually do a section. I think that's also fine. Then let's do right here a class name. Let's give it a max width of 7XL. And you already probably know the gist of it. Max width 7XL tells the screen right here, hey, the width should only be 1280 pixels. So let's also right here do a width of full, width 100%, padding X of 4. Let's do a medium of padding X 8. And then let's do an MX auto to center everything in the middle. Then inside of here, let's render an H1, and I'll just say projects that I have created. So that I have created. Let's save that. Let's see how that looks like. And yeah, you see it looks quite good. We have the padding, that's good, but it isn't big enough. So let's right here give the H1 a class name. And then this will just be text, which will be 4XL, then font, which will be semi-bold. Let's also do right here, I don't know, LG of text 5XL. So on larger devices, I want to have a font size of 48 pixels. And let's do also a padding top of 5 to have a bit of padding to the top. And yeah, that's how it looks like. I think it's actually almost a bit too big. So let me actually right here just say projects. I think that's even better. So let's see. Yeah, I think I'll leave it like that. And then underneath this H1, we'll rather create a p tag and then create a little description. So let's right here just say check out what projects I have created. Let's save that. Let's go back. Yeah, that's good. Let's also style that. So let's give it a class name, and then this will be leading of 7. Let's give it in text, which will be of muted foreground, and a margin top of 2 to have a bit of spacing to the top. Yeah, this looks quite cool. Alright, so we have now created the title, the little description, and what I want to do now is actually render the projects. Now, to render the projects, we have to use some CMS. Now, there are multiple CMSs on the market, I don't know, Strappy and whatever there is, but what we'll use for this project is Sanity.io. I've already used Sanity.io for, I don't know, years. It's quite easy to use, it's good, it's free, or at least in the free tier, and I think it's actually just the best CMS on the market. So now let's actually get started. So let's click on developers, documentation, and then right here let's click on start learning, so on this blue button, and then let's click right here on the introduction course. So what I want to get from this introduction course is just right here the installation command. So let me just copy this is right here, this one, npm create sanity at latest. Let's open my terminal, let's clear everything, and then let me paste it right here. So what do we do right here? So we create a new sanity project at latest. We use the clean template, so no block temp, template or e-commerce template, we start clean, then we create the project right here, we name it right here day or one with Sanity. Let's actually change that. I don't like this name. So instead of saying day one with Sanity, let's just say, I don't know, portfolio. Let's just say portfolio-YouTube. We use the data set which has the name of production, and we use TypeScript. So let me click enter. I hope you now understand what this whole installation command means. Right here I will install the newest Sanity project. So let's click on Y. This again takes a bit. Alright, so you see now the new Sanity package has been installed, but one thing you also see is right here, it tells me that I already have an account. So if you get some error right here, then that means that you don't have a Sanity account or it isn't linked to your VS Code. So please fix that. So please create either a Sanity account or link it right here to VS Code. But if everything has worked, then you already are at the same step as I am, and it tells you right here, it asks you, would you like to add configuration files? Now we don't want to do that, so let's click on N for no. Let's click enter. For the project output path, let's just say Sanity. Let's click enter. And now right here it will also ask us what package manager do we want to use, and we use npm, so let's click enter. Okay, cool. Sanity is done. That's great. So let's open our Explorer and see what has actually right here been created. And as you see, there's only one folder which has been added, and that's the Sanity folder. So this is where all of our Sanity stuff lives. And right here, it's again just a simple project. We have a tsconfig, we have a package.json, but what we really just need is right here the schema types folder. So all of the other stuff is not important for us. We just need right here the schema types folder. So what I think we should first do is actually open the dev server for Sanity. So let me right here open my terminal tab. Let me clear everything. Let me cd into the Sanity folder, and let's do an npm run dev to start our dev server for Sanity. Now this will right here open on localhost 3333. So let me open that in Chrome. Alright, I'm now in Chrome and I'm right here in the Sanity dev server, and right here it tells me that I have to log in with the provider with which I have created my account. So if you have created your account with GitHub, please log in with GitHub. If it's with Google, then with Google, and with email, then use email. So I've created it with GitHub, so let me click on GitHub, and now we should get redirected. So as you see, I got now redirected. It tells me I have a free upgrade. That's fine. Let me close that. But the important thing which I have right here is that we have a warning, no document types. Please define at least one document type in your schema. So what does Sanity want from me? What should I do right here? Well, it's actually quite simple. So the schema types folder right here is there to store your schemas. So your headless CMS, so in that case Sanity, can store multiple schemas. So if you have, for example, an e-commerce project, you would have a product schema, a category schema, maybe a user schema, a newsletter schema, or something like that. You would have multiple schemas. Now for us, we will only have one schema, and this will be the project schema, where we will actually store our project. So what I'll do right here is go in the schema types folder, and then inside of here, let me just create one file, and this will be the project.ts. Now, it's not really important how you name it. You can name it whatever you want, but I will now name it as project.ts since I think that's fine. So let's right here now create our schema. And it's actually quite similar, or I guess the thought process behind Sanity is quite similar to Prisma. You have one schema, you create multiple, I guess, models or fields, in other words, for Sanity, and then you see it in Sanity Studio. So let's right here get started. What we have to do right here is an export const. We have to now give it a name, so I will just name it projects type, and then this will be equal to define type. Now define type is imported from Sanity, and then let me just open that. Now inside of here I have to give this whole schema a name, so let's give our schema a name, and let's just say, I don't know, project. Then we have to give it a title. Then for the title, this is just the uppercase name, at least that's what I do. So the name should be always lowercase or camel case, and the title is whatever you want to do, because that's what will show up in Sanity Studio. So I will just do an uppercase project, then let me add a comma, and then the last thing which I need is the type, and the type is the document. So now we have actually created the schema, and now we have to create the fields. So let's get right here the fields array, and this is an array, so let's create an array, and then inside of here let's create our first field. So let's right here use define field. This is imported from Sanity, and let's create our first field. Now the first field right here will be the title. So each project which we will store will have a title. So let's right here do name. Then for the name I will just say title lowercase. Then for the title, this will be uppercase title, and then let's right here also do a type, and the type will of course be type string. Then let's create another define field or a new field, so let's use define field, and then inside of here let's give it a name, and then this will be for the image, so let's use right here image. Let's give it a title, this will be uppercase image, and then for the type, who would have thought it's image. Let's save that, let's create another field, so let's use the define field helper, let's open that, and let's give it a name. This will be now for the description, so let's use the description, let's give it a title, this will be uppercase description, so let me say that. Then let's also give it a type, and now you could do two things. Either you do a type string, which is fine, or you could do type text. Now again, that's whatever you want to do. I will do type text, but it does not really make any difference. Then the next thing which I want to do is also store a link, so the link of the actual project. So let's right here do a define field, and then inside of here we'll have a name. This will be link. Let's also give it a title, this will be uppercase link, and then let's also give it a type, and this will be not link, but it will be URL. Alright, and now I only have one more field which I want to create, and this will be the tags array, so tags. What do I want to do with tags? Well, with tags, I want to store, for example, what tag I use. So, for example, let's take an e-commerce project, which I want to store right here. I want to say, for example, I use Nextjs, Tailwind, Vercel, etc. So, let's right here use again our define field helper. Let's open that. Let's give it a name. Then for the name, this will just be tags. And then let's do also a title. Title will be uppercase tags. Let's open that, and then let's also do right here in type. This is quite important. And now this is not a type string or anything, but in type array, since I want to store multiple tags. Now you see we currently get an error. Now why do we have an error? Well, that's because I also have to tell Sanity what type of array it will be. So we can say right here off, this will be of type array, and then inside of here let's do in type, which will be string. So let's save that, and now we don't have any errors anymore. So if I now save that and go to Sanity, you still see nothing has changed. It still tells me no document types. Now why is that? I have created a type. What's the error? Well, the error is that we right here have an index.ts file, and I actually have to store this, I guess, schema or this type which I created right here inside of this array. So let me right here get my projects type. This is imported from my projects file. Let's save that. Let's go back, and now this will refresh, and we should see our actual schema. So now on the left side, you see now the project schema, and then I can create my first project. So let's right here already create a project. So let me give it a title. I will just say Netflix clone Nextjs. Let me upload an image. I've now uploaded an image. Let's also create a description. A super cool video I have created ... Then let's also do a link. I will now just use, I don't know, this Sanity website. It does not really matter. And then for the tags, let's just do a few. I don't know, Next.js, Stripe. Let's use Tailwind, and let's say Vercel. Let's click on publish, and now we have already created our first project. Let me actually create another one just so that we have two. Let's just say Airbnb clone cool. Let me upload an image. So I have now uploaded the image. Let's also do a description. A super nice video I have created ... Let's also again paste some links. So I will copy just this link. Let me paste that. Let's create a few tags. Again, I don't know, React. Let's just say Next.js. Let's say shadcn, and maybe, I don't know, Vercel. Let me click on publish, and now we have two projects. So I think we should now actually start querying it so that I can actually show the projects right here. So we can now actually close Sanity since we're already done with that. We don't need it anymore actually. And what I will do now is go again to the project page. So what we have to do right here is just fetch our data. Now it's actually said easier than done. So let's actually first create our async function to fetch our data. So let's right here just do an async function. Let's call it get data. Let's invoke that and open that. So inside of here I have to now write in query. And that's actually quite interesting because Sanity does not use, I don't know, just a normal API query or whatever. It actually uses its own Grok query language. Now, Grok is actually not that easy when you first look at it. It's actually quite complicated when you first see it. But once you understand it, it becomes quite easy. But before we actually write it right here, what we can do is right here click on Vision and write our own Grok query. Now again, at the first look, it's a bit complicated, but honestly, once you use it a bit, it's not that hard. So how does a Grok query always start? So you always use the asterisk symbol and then you use the array symbol. With that, you tell right here Sanity, hey, give me everything you have. Now, of course, in a normal production environment, you don't want to fetch everything, but if I would now click on fetch, you will see that we get everything. Of course, again, we don't need everything, but you already see Sanity always starts with an asterisk and then the array symbol. Now, inside of this array symbol, I can now actually specify what I want. So inside of here, I can say underscore type should be equal to project. So project, again, that's the schema which we have created. And if I now click fetch, you'll see we get an error. Why is that? That's because I added right here 3 equal signs. It should only be 2. So let me again click on fetch. And now you see we only get 2 items. And that's because I only have 2 projects. Now still we fetch a lot of stuff. For example, for the asset, I get an underscore ref, an underscore type. I get right here an underscore ref, an underscore updated at. I don't need that. That's just bandwidth, which I don't need, and I don't need this data. So what we can do right here is use these brackets. I don't know how you call them. I call them the object brackets. And then right here, I can now specify what I want. So I, for example, want to get a title. I, for example, want to get the underscore ID. So I can now click on fetch, and you will now see we get 2 items in the array, and we get the title and the underscore ID. Now still we need a bit of more stuff. So we need to get the link, we need to get the description, we need to get the tags, and let's for now actually click on fetch. Let's see what we get. We get a title underscore ID, we get the link, we get the description, we get the tags, and the last thing which we need is the image. Now the image with Sanity is quite interesting. If I now try right here to get the image, what you will see is that we right here get an underscore type, and then an asset, and then right here an underscore type for the asset, and then an underscore ref. Now we don't get any URL, and this is not quite what we want. So with Sanity, it's actually not that simple. You get the image URL through the query. So we have to actually write our query a bit differently. So instead of getting the image right here, we will create a new field, I guess. We'll get right here the image URL, and then this image URL will be equal to the image.asset, and then we'll have an arrow, and this will point to the URL. Let me now click on fetch, and now you see we get an image URL. So this is how you write in query with Sanity. You right here use an asterisk with the array symbol. With that you fetch everything. Then you specify right here what you exactly want to get, and then you actually fetch, I guess, what you really need. So now we have actually written our query. So I can now copy this query, go back, and then right here we can do a constant query. This will be equal to upticks, and then inside of here I can just pass our query. So now we have to actually fetch that somehow. And now you might ask me, hey, how do I fetch that? And that's a good question, because currently we are not able to actually fetch that, because what we need is now an helper. So we need a Next.js toolkit for Sanity. So let me again open a new terminal tab, and what we have to install right here is npm i next-sanity. So with this we can now then actually fetch data, for example do caching and a lot of other stuff. Alright, so Next-Sanity is now finally installed, so we can now actually start initializing that. So for that, let's go in the app folder, let's go in the lib folder, and then let's create a new sanity.ts file. Now inside of here, let's do an export const client. This will be equal to create client. Now create client is imported from Next-Sanity, and let's open that. Inside of here, we have to pass a few things. So first of all, the project ID. I will right now just give it an empty string. Then we have a data set. The data set will be called production. So if you can remember, when we installed Sanity, we named our data set production. And then let's also right here give it an API version. And the API version right here will be 2024-01-01. Let's also right here set useCDN to false. Now, why do I set right here the caching, or why do I set useCDN to false right here in Sanity? Well, that's actually quite simple. Next.js has its own caching system, and we just don't need the CDN. It will just create problems for us, and we just don't need that. But what we need right now is the actual project ID. For that, I will have to go to the Sanity website, so not to our Sanity studio, but to the actual website, and then click on your profile right here and click on manage projects. So I've now clicked on this project right here, portfolio-YouTube, and right here you already have your project ID, so I will copy that right here and just paste it right here. Now you can either pass it right here just as in string, or if you want to feel fancy, you can go to your .env file. Let me first of all delete this password, I don't need it anymore. And then what you could do, for example, right here is a next_public. So with that I tell Next.js, hey, this env variable is not only server side applicable, but also to the client side. And then we could just name it, I don't know, sanity underscore ID, and then you could pass the value if you want to. So we could do that right now, and then this will be equal to that. And then let me just copy this name. And what I could do now is, instead of just getting the string, I could do in process, this is lowercase, process.env.next underscore public sanity ID. And now this already looks good. So we are now done with configuring sanity, so we can now actually fetch our data. So right here we have our query, again, if you can remember. So let's actually fetch that. So what we can do right here is the constant data, and then this will be equal to await client. Client is imported from our lib folder, dot fetch, and I have to pass our query. So this looks already good. We now fetch our data, and what we could do now is return our data. Okay, so this now looks good. Now let's actually get our data through the front end. So let's do constant data, and then this will be equal to await get data. Let's invoke that, and now we get an error. So right here it tells me await expressions are only allowed within async functions. Did you mean to mark this function as async? So yes, I want to mark it as async. So let's do an export default async function, and now the error is gone. And again, it's safe to do so because we're in a server component, which means we're in a server context. So since we now get our data, I think we could now actually get started with mapping over it. Or actually, before I do that, there's one important thing. If you now hover over data, you see data is of type any. Now, why is that? Well, that's with Sanity, that's one problem, I guess, which it has. It does not generate types. Now, I know Sanity has now come out with a beta feature which generates types for you. Now, we won't actually use this because, again, it's in beta, it could change. I don't want to create a tutorial with that. So we'll create our own interface and then just give it the types right here. So what we'll do right here is go in the app folder, go in the lib folder, and then right here, let's just create a new file, which will be called interface.ts. Then inside of here, let's do an export interface. Let's give it a name, and this will just be the projects card. And then let me open that. Inside of here, we'll have a title. This will be of type string. We'll have an underscore ID, which will be of type string. We'll have an image URL, which will be of type string. We will also have a tags array, so tags will be of type string array. And then we will also have a description. This will be of type string. And we will also have a link, which will be also of type string. Now, it's quite important that you spell everything correctly right here. So what I would encourage you to do is double check if everything right here is the same with this query right here. So if you have some spelling right here, please check that because you will get errors if you do so. So since we have now created the interface, I can now use that. So for our data, I can now give it right here the type of projects card and then import that from our lib. And it's also important right here that I mark it as an array because again, our data is an array and not a singular object. Cool, so this now looks good. Let's now actually get started with mapping over our data. So under the p tag, let's create a div element. Let's right here give it actually a class name. This will be padding y of 12. Let's also do a grid. On medium devices, a grid calls of 2. Then let's also do a gap, which will be 4. Let's do an SM, which will be gap of 6. Let's do a medium of gap, which will be 8. Let's do a large, which will be gap of 12. And then on small devices, so on mobile devices, let's do a grid calls of 1. So let's do grid calls of 1. Let me now map over the data. So let me get our data, dot map. Let's get an item, and then let's just return it as you know it. Now, what I want to do right here is actually create a link. So when the user hovers over the project, or I mean clicks on the project, he will then get redirected to the actual project URL. Now, again, as you know, in the example before, we always use the link component, but now I won't use the link component. So why is that? Well, that's actually quite simple. First of all, we don't need client-side navigation because it's an external website, and we don't need prefetching, again, because it's an external website. So let's use right here the a tag. So let me get the normal a tag, and then for the href right here, I can already pass it. This will be the item dot, where do we have it? Link. Then we also get an error. We have to pass a key, and the key will just be our item.id or underscore ID. Let me now open the a tag. Let's save that for now. I will actually have to also give the a tag right here in class name, and this will be of group and then also block. Also, one thing I'll do right here is add a target property. So when the user clicks on the actual link, I don't want to open it in the same tab, but I want to open a new tab. So the target will be underscore blank. So let's now open our A tag, and then inside of here, let me render a new div element. Now this div element will store our image. So what I'll do right here is create a class name, and I want to actually create an aspect ratio. So for the image should have its own aspect ratio. So let's right here do an aspect, and then this will be -w-16, and then aspect of height. So let's do an aspect of height, which will be 12. Let's also do an overflow, which will be hidden. Then let's also right here do a rounded. This will be of 2xl, and then let's also do a relative. Then inside of this div, let me now render a image component. So let's import that from next/image, and then inside of here I can pass it in source. This will be the item.image URL, and then let's give it also an alt, and we'll just say, I don't know, image description. Let's now save that. Let's see how that looks like. So I will go back. Let's go to my page. Let me refresh our page right here. And now in a second, I already should see my projects. And I don't see any project. Why is that? Well, we got an error. It tells me error image with source is missing required width property. Now, one thing I haven't talked about is actually the image component itself. So let's go to Nextjs.org and let's search for the image component, because you might ask yourself, why do we use the image component and not the normal image tag? So right here, the Nextjs tells you the Nextjs image component extends the HTML image element with features for automatic image optimization, like for example, size optimization, visual stability, faster page loads, and asset flexibility. So that's why we use the image component. Nevertheless, you could use the image tag. It really does not make a huge difference in the end effect. Now again, if we now head over to our localhost, we now get an error, and that's because for your image you always have to pass in width and a height. Now if you don't want to pass in width and a height, you can also right here pass and fill property. So if I now go back, this error should be gone, and now we get a new error. So now it tells us right here, invalid source prop. So this URL on next/image hostname cdn.sanity.io is not configured under your images. So what's the error right here? So if you use the image component, there's of course some compute happening. So Next.js has to compute and actually make your image smaller and more accessible, more flexible, etc. This takes of course cost, so it has some compute, and for that you want to actually, I guess, secure yourself that Next.js does not actually optimize each image that it gets. You only want to actually whitelist a few domains which you actually want to optimize. So let's go to next.config.mjs. Then right here, let me open that. Let's get our images. Then let me open that. Right here we'll get the remote patterns. This is an array, and then inside of here we'll have the individual host name. So right here, let's get the host name. This will be equal to cdn.sanity.io. So I will just copy that, paste that. Then we also right here have the protocol. This is of course HTTPS. And then we will also have the port, and this will just be an empty string right now. We don't have any port, so it will just be empty. Let's now save that. If you open your terminal, you will see that Next.js automatically restarts. This is a Next.js feature. So let's head over to localhost and refresh our page. So our page has now refreshed and we don't see anything. What's the problem right here? Well, it's actually quite simple. So right here we use, if you go to this div, we use aspect-width16 and aspect-height-12. Now to make this work, to make this aspect ratio work, we have to use actually a special I guess package or dev package. So you can search for Tailwind CSS aspect ratio, and then you will already have this link right here. This is the GitHub link, and then right here you will see that this is a plugin that provides a composable API for giving elements a fixed aspect ratio. And also it's important right here to mention this is in development dependency, so this does not really show up in your production bundle size, but only in your dev right here environment. So let's go back, let's open our terminal right here, let's open a new terminal tab, and then let me install it right here. Then the next step we have to do is actually go in the tailwind.config file and then actually add it right there. So let's go to the tailwind.config.ts file. Then right here we'll have our plugins. Let me add that right here. And then we also have to right here say core plugins aspect ratio false. So let's right here say core plugins, and then let's say our aspect ratio, and let's set it to false. Let's save that. And now if I go back to our page, you now see our images. Yeah, do they look nice? Yeah, I don't know, maybe not that nice. So let's right here create a class name, and then what we'll do right here is first of all, let's do an object of cover so that our eyes don't hurt. So if I now go back, see this already looks better. Then let's also right here say group hover, and then this will just be a scale, and we could say, I don't know, scale 105. I think that's good. Then let's right here also do a transition transform. And then let's do an duration, let's say, I don't know, 500 milliseconds. Then let's also do an ease in out. And I think we should also do a rounded of 2xl. Let's save that. Let's again go back. And yeah, you see now we have this hover, and this looks quite cool in my opinion. So what I want to do now is render under the image the actual title, the little description, the tags, and everything like that. So for that, let me go above the A tag, but under the div, let's create a new div element, and let's first of all give it a class name of margin top 4 to have a bit of spacing. Then inside of here, I will now render just an h2 tag, and then inside of here, let me get the item.title. Let's save that, let's go back, and now we should see Netflix clone Nextjs and Airbnb clone cool. So this looks quite nice, but let's of course style that. So let's right here give it a class name, and then let's right here just say font which will be medium, and let's say also text of LG. Let's save that, let's go back. Yeah, I think this is fine. I don't really think I would change anything. One thing we could, for example, say is hover of underline. Let's see how that looks like. Yeah, I think this is fine. I think I will leave it like that. Let's now also render the little description. So under this h2, I will render a p tag. Then inside of here, we'll get our item.description. So let me right here get a class name. Let's say margin top of 1. Let's say right here text muted or foreground. Let's save that. Let's see how that looks like. Yeah, this looks quite good. And one thing we could also do is add a line clamp of 1 so that we know that the description is maximum of 1 line, or actually let's change it to 3 lines. So yeah, I think this is fine. So the next thing I want to do now is render the tags. So let's go under the p tag, let's render a div right here. Let's right here get a class name. This will be margin top of 3, flex, and then let's do a flex of wrap. And let's do a gap, which will be 2. And then inside of here, let me now map over the items. So let's do an item.tags.map. Let's right here get a tag item, and then let's also get an index. Let me now return that, and let's render a span element. Now we get an error, so let me give the span a key. This will be the index, and now we can actually right here render our item. So let's right here just get our tag item, and let's first of all see how that looks like. So now we get our tags, so Nextjs, Stripe, Tailwind, Vercel, and yeah, it does not look that nice, so let's actually change that. So let's go to the span, let's get a class name, and then this will be of inline flex, so let's get an inline of flex. Let's get an items which will be center, let's do an rounded which will be medium, let's do an BG which will be primary, we get it from shadcn UI, and this will have an opacity of 10%, so I can do that with /10. Let's do padding X, so padding on the horizontal side of 3. Let's do padding Y of 1.5, so on the vertical side. Let's do text, which will be XS. On smaller or bigger devices, let's use a text of small. Then let's do font, which will be medium. Let's also do text of primary. Then let's also right here give it a wing, which will be 1. Let's do a wing, which will be inset. And then the last thing which we need is the wing, which will have a primary color and an opacity of 20%. Let's save that. Let's go back. And this is how it looks like. Yeah, it looks alright. It looks alright. It could be better. So what I think we should do right now is actually head over to ui.shadcn.com, and what I want to get from here is actually right here the themes. So I want to change my theme. I don't like this black theme which we have. Let's change it, for example, to, we could do blue, we could do orange. Let's actually use blue. Let me click on copy code. I will copy this right here. Let's go to our globals.css file, and then where we have this layer base with these CSS variables, let me actually delete that. I will delete this right here, and then I will just paste what I've just copied. So let me paste that. Let's now save that. Let's go back, and now you see this actual whole color scheme has changed. So now we have right here the contact me button, it's blue. We have this right here, the tabs again, these are blue. If I now go back to the guestbook, you now see this button is also blue. And if I go to the home page, okay, we don't see anything right here, but you in general see that we now have this blue color, and this looks quite cool. Now one thing I'll also maybe do right here for these tags, let's actually change it a bit. Let's go to the page, and instead of wing 1, let's do a wing of 2. Let's save that, let's go back. Yeah, I think I'll leave it like that. I think that's good. Let's now go on mobile. Let's see how it looks like on mobile. And yeah, this also looks great. Alright everyone, so we're now done with the projects, we're done with the guest book, so now let's actually get started with our homepage. So I'm now in the page.tsx file, so our index page, and I think we should already get started without any further ado. So let me first of all delete this return, let me create a new one, let's right here create a div element, and then let me go in class name, let's do max width of 7xl, W of full, padding x of 4, on medium devices or bigger, let's do padding x of 8, and let's center everything with an MX of auto. Now inside of here we could write everything just in this file, this would be fine. So we could write all the code for the hero, we could write all of the code for, I don't know, the about section and everything like that. This would be totally fine and you can do that. But I think I will actually break everything into separate components because I think it's just easier for the eyes and to actually understand it. So let's actually do that. So I'll open my Explorer right here. Let me go in the app folder. Let's go in the components folder. And then inside of here, let's create an hero.tsx. So inside of this component, we'll store all of our code for the hero. So let's actually get started with that. To get started, let's right here do an export function. We'll name it hero. Let's invoke that. Let's open that and let's just do a return. So let me spell return correctly. And then let's just do a div and h1 and let's say hello from the hero page. Let's save that. Let me now actually also right here render that in the page.tsx. So let me get the hero component. Let's close that. Let's save that and let's see how that looks like. So now you see right here hello from the hero page. So with that we know that the component works and that we actually can get started with styling that. So let me delete this div right here. Let's create a new div element and let me give it right here a class name. So we'll again create right here a grid layout. So let's right here do a grid. Let's do a grid which will be calls of 1. So on a mobile screen we'll only have 1 column, and then on larger devices let's do an LG of grid calls which will be 3, and let's do a gap of 4. So now you might ask yourself, how does again this grid layout work? I don't really understand that. So let me show it to you. So let's again take our rectangle. This is our screen right here. So this is our screen, and as you see on a mobile device we only have 1 column. So that means that all the children which we'll render in the div will take the whole width or the whole column, I guess. So let's take a child. This will just be, I don't know, this will be an image. It will take the whole width because it takes 1 column. But as you see on a larger device we have 3 columns. That means you can break this whole column, or I guess this whole screen, into 1, 2 and then 3 columns. So we'll have in total 3 columns. And the layout which I want to create on larger devices is that, for example, one item only takes 1 column and then the second item will take 2 columns. So at the end of the day it will look something like right here, I guess 30%, and then something like this will have about 70%. So 1 column will be smaller and 1 column will be bigger. This is how our columns would look like and our whole grid layout. So let's actually get started right here. Let's create a div element. Let's right here give it a class name. Then right here let me give it a call span of 1 for smaller devices, and then on larger devices this will have a call span of 2. So this will be right here the 70%. Also I misspelled that, so call span 2. Let's also do right here in height of full. Let's do BG of gray 100. Let's do minimum height, and this will be of custom value 500 pixels. And also let's do right here on larger devices a minimum height of 300 pixels. So let me get right here 300 pixels. And then let's also do a rounded. This will be of 2XL. And then let's also do a padding which will be 8. Now padding 8 right here just corresponds to 32 pixels. Again, you could for example do it as a custom value, but why should you when already Tailwind CSS offers it for you automatically? Now inside of here let's actually get started with rendering the content, and what I want to render inside of here is an H1. Inside of here I'll just say hey, I am Jan Marshall, and let me right here also get an emoji. I guess we could use, I guess let's use this, why not? Let's save that and let's see how that looks like. So let me go back to our code, and this is how it looks like. So now you already see this background color, as already said, takes about 70%, and then we have the title right here. Now does it look nice? Nope, we have to style that, so let's do that. Let's give this H1 a class name. This will be text of 4XL. Then on medium devices or bigger, header, we should do right here in text of 6XL, and let's do a font of medium. Let's save that. Let's again go back. And yeah, I think this actually looks quite nice. One thing I'll do right here is maybe instead of medium, let's use an LG. So if you have a device bigger than LG, or what we currently have, this is an LG device, then it will be 6XL. And if it's smaller, like a mobile device, we'll have a text of 4XL. Let me now create another H1 underneath right here. And let's just say I am a web developer working and living in Germany. Let me also get an emoji right here, again the German flag, and then let me save that. Let's see how that looks like. Yeah, it's fine, but we of course have to style that, so let's also right here give it in class name, and then this will just be of text 4XL. On larger devices this will be in text of 6XL, and let's do a font which will be normal, and let's do a margin top of 3. Let's save that. Let's again go back. Yeah, this looks okay. I like that actually quite a lot. Let's now save that. Let's see how that looks like. And yeah, I think this looks quite fine. Let's leave it like that. Let's now also create a button right here underneath that. And for the button, actually, you could now either go to my GitHub and copy it, or what I'll now open is a special website. This is the website devdojo.com/tailwindcss/buttons. We'll use this actual website to copy this button right here. I liked it quite a lot, and it's actually not that easy to recreate yourself. So either go to this URL right here, go to my GitHub repo, do whatever you want, but we'll need this button. So let me click right here on copy, and then we can go under this H1 and actually paste it down below. Now this right here uses a class, so I will do a Command F to search it. Then I'll type class. We want to replace it with class name. Let's also right here do it that it's only actually equal, so to match the whole word. And then let me click right here on replace. Then let's again save that. Now we can close this everything. Let's again go back to our code. And yes, this already looks quite nice. Nevertheless, button text is of course not very, let's say, it does not really say anything. So let's, instead of saying button text, let's right here say get in touch. Let's do an exclamation mark. And let's also do a margin top. So let's do a margin top of 5. Let's save that. Let's again go back. And yeah, this looks very cool, and the animation is also very beautiful. Now, one thing you will also see is if I click on this button right here, nothing really happens. But when I click on this button, what I want to happen is that we actually open like a contact form. So what we can use right here is, instead of this hashtag underscore, we can say mail to, let's use a colon, and then you can type the email to which you want to actually send the email. So I will just write my own email, and then let's save that. And if I now save that, go back, and if I now click on the button, my own actual email program will open. So let me show it to you. I will now click on that. And now for me, my email program has actually opened in the background. Now I won't actually open it for you because I don't want to leak sensitive data. But with this, we don't actually have to create our own contact form, but everything is done through the website, which is quite cool. Let's also do the same right here for the contact me button. So let me actually go to the navbar, and then where do we have it? We have it right here, button and SM block contact me. What we can do right here is mark it as child, and then instead of right here just saying contact me, let me wrap that in the A tag. And then inside of here, let me again paste contact me. And then for the href, let me again do a mail to. And then let me paste my email again right here. Let's save that. Let's again go back. Yeah, now our styling is a bit broken. So instead of SM block, let's do an SM flex. Let's again go back, and now this should be again centered, and yes, this looks already way better. Alright, our two buttons are now working, so the contact me button and the get in touch button, and what I want to do now is right here on the right side, I want to render an image. Now what you need to do right now is actually go right here to your public folder and then actually store an image right here. So we have our public folder right here, and what I want you to do is actually store an image right here. So if you don't have one, you can go to my repo, just copy it from there, but what I'll do right now is just upload my image right here real quick. So this is my image, and that's what I'll use right here. So I've now actually imported that in my public folder, and then we can now import that in our hero. So on top, what I can do is an import. Let's import me from // public and then /me.jpg. Now I can actually use that. For that, I'll go under this div right here. And then right here, let me get the image component from next/image. This is in self-closing tag. Let me right here give it in source. This will be me. Then let's also give it an alt. I will just say Jan Marshall. Again, say whatever you want. And then let's also do in class name. This will be in call span of 1. Let's also do in height. This will be of custom value 500 pixels. Let's also right here do an object. This object will be of cover. And then let's do in rounded, which will be 2XL. And let's also do in BG of gray 100. And now let's save that. Let's again go back. And now you see my image right here. So this actually worked. One thing I will also right here do is add in priority tag. So let's right here say priority. And with that, I just tell Next.js to actually load the image within priority. So I don't want to have any ugly loading states. I want the image to load fast. And that's why I added this priority tag right here. So we're now already done with the hero. It was quite quick as you see. And now we can actually continue with our next section. So let me right here open my Explorer, let's go in the app folder, let's go in the components folder, and let's create a new component which we'll name section2.tsx. Now inside of here, let's do an export function, let me call it section2, and then let me just open that. Inside of here, let me create a return statement, let's do a div h1, and let's say hello from this section2. Let's save that, let's go back, and we don't see anything. Well, that's because we haven't rendered it anywhere, so let me render it in our page.tsx. Let's go under the hero and let's render our section2 imported from our components. Let's go back and now we see hello from the section2. So let's actually get started and actually make it look nice. And for that, let me again delete everything in the return statement. Let's create a new div element. Let's go in class name. Let's again create a grid layout. So let's do a grid calls of 1 for a mobile screen. Then let's do on larger devices a grid calls of 3, and let's do a gap which will be 4 and a margin top of 10. Then inside of here, let's now actually get started with our first, column. So let's create a div, let's give it a class name, let's do a width of full, let's do a relative, and let's do a call span of 1. Now inside of here, I want to again render an image. So let me right here create an image, and let's use the image component provided by next/image. This is in self-closing tag. And then inside of here, I have to now pass in source. And then for the source, again, I will get it from my GitHub repo. So if you want to do the same, go to my GitHub repo and get the image. This right here will just be the square image, which I need for this project. So again, let me close that. Let me first of all import that. So on the top, let's do an import square from // public, and then this will be the square.svg. Now right here for the image, I can now pass our source. This will be the square. Let's give it an alt. I will just say square, and let's save that for now. If I now go back to Chrome, you see this is how it looks like. This is the image. It does not look that good, so let's actually style that. And then let's also go right here in class name, and then let's just say width of full, age of full. Let's do right here an object, which will be cover, and then let's also do rounded of 2XL. Let's now save that. Let's see how that looks like. And yeah, this looks already way better. So our left column is now filled. Let's now actually fill also our right column. So for that, let me go under this div right here. So for our column 1, and let me create actually a new div element. Let's right here also give it a class name, and then this will be flex of call. So I want to have a vertically aligned column. Let's also do a width of full. On mobile devices, let's do a call span of 1, and then on larger devices, let's do a call span of 2. Let's also do a gap of 4, and this should be all for this div. Now inside of here, let me use the card component. This is imported from our components. Let's open that. Let's also right here give it in class name, since I want to actually style it a bit differently. So let's give it in class name, and this will just be BG gray of 100, and then I will give it in border of none. Then inside of here, let me now actually render something. So let's right here get in card title. This is imported from our components, and I will just say explore my stack. Let's save that. Let's see how that looks like. And now you see right here on the right side, this is our now column, or I guess our card, and this is how it looks like. Now, does it look that nice? No, but we'll actually fix that. So the problem which I have right here is currently that we don't have any padding. And to fix that, it's actually quite simple. We have to wrap our card title in another component, and this will be the card header. Again, imported from our components. Let me again paste our card title. And if I now go back, we again have this nice padding. Let's now also create a card description. So let's get a card description component. And then inside of here, let me just say, check out the tools I use daily. Let's save that. Let's again go back. Yeah, this looks quite cool in my opinion. So we now have the title, the little description, and then underneath here, I want to now render the actual, I guess, things or the actual tools which I use. So for that, we will actually have to use icons. So let me go under the card header first of all. Let's now use the card content component from our components. And then inside of here, let me first of all give it a class name. This will be flex, which will be wrap. And then let's also do a gap of 4. Now you might ask me, what does flex wrap do? Well, that means that if we have a container and the icons actually overflow the actual container, they will just wrap down below and won't actually overflow the actual container. So yeah, this actually should be enough. And now right here, I want to map over our icons. So what I want you to do is again, go to my GitHub repo and then copy my icons and go and paste them right here. So these are the tag icons. And for example, we have the Figma icon and Framer icon and GitHub icon, etc. And that's what we need right here. So if you have now actually right here imported all the tag icons, we have to now actually also import them right here in our code base. And this is now a bit of manual work. So what you'll have to do, for example, is do an import, then import sketch, and this will be then from //public / tag icons / sketch.svg. Now this takes a bit and it's not that nice. So what I would encourage you to do is just go to my GitHub repo and copy all of the import actual sequences and then just paste them right here. So let me actually do that real quick. So as you see, I've now imported all of the icons, so Sketch, Canva, Figma, for example, ChatGPT, etc. All of them have now been imported and now we can actually use them. So what I'll do right here is create an array. So I will just say const icons. This right here will equal to an empty array, and then inside of here I can now get all of our icons. So I will need, for example, the Sketch icon. I will also have to get right here the Canva icon. I will have to get the AI icon, Figma, then let's also right here get ChatGPT, let's get the cloud icon, let's get Framer, let's get GitHub, let's get Slack, let's get Discord, let's get YouTube, then let's also get Chrome, let's get PR, let's get PS, let's right here also get Notion, let's right here get Micro, and now this should already be all. I have now actually right here used all of my icons inside of this icons array, and now I can actually map over it. So let me again go to this card content right here. I can now use it inside of here. Let me right here get my icons, let's do a dot map, and then inside of here let me get an item, and let me actually also get an index. Let's now return that, and then inside of here I can use the image component, which I already imported. And then inside of here, let me actually give it a key. This will just be the index. Let's right here also give it in source. For the source, this will just be the item. Let's give it an alt. This will just be icon. And let's give it a class name, which will be W of 16 and height of 16. Let's save that. Let's go back. Okay, as you now see, our icons are fully rendered. And if I actually make my screen smaller, so on a mobile device, you will actually see them. Let me right here maybe zoom in, and not an iPad, but an iPhone. And again, yeah, let's see. You see, this looks actually quite cool. So yeah, I think we can actually now continue. So let me again close this, and then let's actually create now our second card right here. So under this card component, let me create a new div element, and then right here, let's give it a class name. This will be grid. And then on a mobile device, let's give it a grid calls of 1. On a device which is small or bigger, let's right here do a grid calls of 3. And then let's also do a width of full and a gap of 4. Then inside of here, what I want to do now is map actually over social media icons. So over an Instagram icon, a Twitter icon, and a LinkedIn icon. And for that, again, you will have to go to my GitHub repo and just copy the 3 icons. So I will now open my public right here folder and just paste it inside of here. So now we have a Twitter icon, we have a LinkedIn icon, and a Instagram icon. So now I can actually import them. So right here, let me just import, for example, Twitter. Then this will be from // public and then /twitter.svg. Let's import Instagram. So let's do an import insta from // public /insta.svg, and then the last thing will be LinkedIn. So let's do an import LinkedIn from // public /linkedin.svg. So let me right here again create a new array just to make our life a bit easier. So let's do a constant. This will be a social media, and this will be equal to an array. Now inside of here, let's create 3 objects. So the first one, let's right here do an ID. This will be of 1. Let's give it an icon. Then this icon will be equal to Insta, and let's also create a name, and this will be equal to Instagram. Let's now create a second icon or a second object. This will have an ID of 2. Let's also give it an icon. This will be of Twitter. And then let's also create a name. And this will be just X or / Twitter. Let's now create a third object, and this will be for LinkedIn. So let's give it an ID of 3. Let's give it an icon. This will be of LinkedIn. And let's also create a name, and the name will be LinkedIn. Let's save that, and now we can actually use that. So let me again scroll down a bit further. And now inside of this div, let me use this array. So let's get our social media array .map. Let me get the item, and then let me just return that. Now inside of here, let me again use our card component. We already actually imported that. Let me also right here give it in key. This will be the item.id. Let me also right here give it in class name, and then this will be in padding of 4, a flex of call. That's in items of center to centered, and then also on smaller or bigger devices, and this will be of items start. So I want to align it on the left corner. Let's also do an BG of gray 100 and a border of none. Then inside of here, what I want to render is our image. So let me again use the image component. We already imported that. And then let me give it in source. This will be the item.icon. Let's give it an alt. This will just be the icon. And then let's also give it a class name of W16 and height of 16. Let's save that. Let's again go back. And now you see we have 3 icons. So first of all, the Instagram icon, the Twitter icon, and the LinkedIn icon. Then let's right here under this image, let's also now render an H1. Let's right here just render our item.name, so the name of the actual provider. And this is how it looks like. It does not look that nice. I think we should have a bit of margin to the top and a bit of a more bigger font size. So let's right here give it in class name. Let's do in class name. This will be of text to XL. Let's also do in font of medium. And let's give it a bit of padding to the top with 3. So let's again go back. Yeah, this already looks nicer. I like it a lot. And what I want to now also render right here is like the username. So let me again go back, and then inside of the array, let's create a new field. This will be the username. And then inside of here, what I want you to do is just write your actual username. I'll just create a dummy username. So @Jan for all services. So let me copy paste that right here and also paste it right here. And then the last thing which I want to create is also a link. So the link to the actual service. Now I won't actually create one. So I will just use localhost 3000. You of course should use the link of your actual Instagram account and Twitter and etc. So let's do link right here again, localhost 3000, and the same for LinkedIn, link localhost 3000. So I can now actually use that. So let me again scroll down, and now under this H1, let me first of all actually render the username. So let's get the p tag. Let's right here render our item.username. Let's also right here give it in class name, and then the class name will be text of muted, which will be foreground. Let's save that. Let's go back. Yeah, this looks quite cool. And then the last thing which I want to do right here is render like a button to follow. So under this p tag, let's use our button component provided by our components. Let's open that. Let's also give it a few properties. So let's right here give it in class name of margin top 4, and let's give it in size of small. And then let's do also an as child. And then inside of here, I can render an a tag. For the href, this will be equal to the item.link. And now inside of here, I can just say follow. Let's save that. Let's go back. And yeah, this looks quite beautiful. I will leave it like that. So we have now the icon of the actual service. We have the name of the service. We have the username, and we have the follow button. And in your ideal use case, if you would now click on that, you would get redirected to the actual URL where you actually have your username. So cool, this is now done. Our section 2 is looking good. Let me see how it looks like on mobile. So we have right here this hero, we have my image, then we have our stack. Our stack also right here converts to mobile screen. So this all looks quite beautiful. And what I want to now render is our actual about section. So for that, again, let's create a separate component. Let's go in the app folder, let's go in the components folder, and let's right here create an about section .tsx. Inside of here, let's now do an export function. This will be the about section, and then let me just open that right here. Let's create a return statement, and for now I will actually just do a dummy return. So let's do div h1, and let's say hello from the about section. Let's save that. Let's again go to our page.tsx, and now let me right here render our about section. So I've now imported that from our components, and if I now go back, you will right here see hello from the about section. So this component works, so let's actually get started with styling that to make it actually look nice. And then right here, let me delete everything in the return statement. Let's create a new div element, and then let's start with a class name. This will again have a grid layout, so let's do in grid. Let's do right here in grid calls of 1 for in mobile screen. On larger devices, let's do in grid calls of 3, and let's do in gap of 4 and a margin top of 10. Inside of here, let me now render a card component imported from our components, and then let me actually give it a class name. This will have a call span of 1 on actual mobile devices, and on larger devices this will have a call span of 2. Let's also do a border of none, and then let's also actually right here give it a BG of gray 100 and a padding of 8. Now what I want to render inside of here is again just a section about myself, so an about section. So let's right here create an H1, and let me think what I could write right here. And right here I will just say, I don't know, passionate, versatile web developer who loves to create. I think this is fine. Let's just leave it like that. Let's again go back. Let's see how that looks like. Yeah, it looks fine, but of course it's not big enough, so let's style that. Let's give the H1 a class name. Let's say on mobile devices this will be a text of 4XL, and then on medium device or on large device and bigger, let's do a text of 6XL. Let's save that, let's go back. Yeah, this is good. I will leave it like that. Let's now also create like a paragraph where I just describe myself a bit more. So let me create a p tag, and then inside of here I will now just copy paste something. You can write your own stuff if you want to, but I think this is fine, so I will copy paste. And right here I just say, I'm a software engineer with a passion for creating efficient and user-friendly web applications. I have experience in developing scalable and maintainable web applications using modern technologies and frameworks. I'm passionate about creating blah blah blah. So something not very important, but you can write whatever you want. Let's see how that looks like. Yeah, it's fine, but of course we have to style that. So let me right here give the p tag a class name, and let's do a margin top of 4. Let's say a text muted of foreground, and then right here let's also say on larger devices or bigger, let's say text of LG. Let's now save that. Let's again go back, and yeah, this looks quite cool. I will leave it like that. One thing I also want to do is on the bottom, like render again the button which we have in the hero. So let me go to the hero, and I will just copy this button. So this a tag, I will copy that, go back, and then let me paste it under the p tag. Let's save that, let's go back, and yeah, this looks beautiful. So what I want to do now is on the right side again is render an image for myself. Again, you can use your own one, or you can go again to my GitHub repo and just use it from there. So I've now imported the second image for myself, so I can now actually use it right here. So let me close that. Let's import that in our about section. So let me just do an import me from public/jan.jpg. I can now use that. So what I'll have to do is go under this card. Then let me create a new div element. We'll have to go right here in class name. So let's do a class name of call span 1. And then inside of here, what I can now use is our image component provided by next/image. Let's pass it in source. This will be me. Let's do an alt. I will again just say Jan Marshall. You can change that. And let's give it in class name. And this will be in custom height of 500 pixels. Again, for a custom height, you just use these array brackets. Then this will be 500 pixels. Let's do an object, which will be cover. And let's do rounded, which will be LG, and a W of full. Let's save that. Let's go back, and now you should see the image right here on the right side. Let's see, it currently loads. And yeah, this again looks quite cool, and I think we can leave it like that. Now the next thing which I want to render right here is like my favorite project. So again, we already have this projects tab right here, but what I want to do now is actually render like my 2 most favorite projects, just as I do right here. So let me again go to the home, and let's right here just create a new component for that. So let's go into the app folder, components folder, and let's just say right here, or let's create a new file, and I'll just name it favorite projects. So projects.tsx. Let's right here do an export function. Let's name it just favorite projects, and then let me invoke that and open that. Let's do a return statement, again just a dummy return. Let's do a div h1, and let's say hello from the favorite site. Let's save that. Let's again go back. Let's go to our page.tsx. Let me actually right here import our favorite components or favorite projects. This is self-closing. Let's again go back, and now you see hello from the favorite site. So this component again works. This is great, and now we can actually make it work. Now to make this actual component work, we first of all have to load our data. So let's again create right here an async function. This will be get data, or it will have the name of get data. Let me open that. I think I misspelled async, so let me spell it correctly. And inside of here, we have to now write our query. So let's do constant query, and this query will be actually the same to our projects query. So I'll open our projects page, I will copy the query right here, and then let me go back again to our component and just paste it right here. Now here's one thing which I actually want to change or actually modify. So currently we just fetch all of the projects which we have, and this is fine for the projects page, but for my favorite projects, I want to only fetch 2 actual items. So what we have to do right here is modify the query a bit. So we can add right here in vertical line, then we can say order, and what I want to do is right here order our actual projects by the created at timestamp. So I want to have the newest things. For that, let's do an underscore created at, and then this will be descending. Then let's right here also do an array symbol, and right here we'll use like in spread, so everything from 0 to 2. So use in 0, then 3 dots, and then 2. With that, we now just get 2 actual projects, and that's what I want. Let me now fetch the data. So let's do a constant. This will be data, and this will be equal to await client. Client is imported from the lib folder dot fetch, and I want to fetch our query. Let's now also return our data, and now this should already be all. So let me now actually get our data in the front end. So let's do a constant data, and then this will be equal to await get data. Let's invoke that, and now we get one error. It tells me await expressions are only allowed within async functions. So we have to modify this function right here as an async function. So let's do an export async function, and now this error is gone. So if you now hover over our data, it tells us data is declared, but its value is never read. So let's again give it a type, and this type will be projects card, and then it's an array. So let's add an array symbol. Now you might ask me, where do we get our projects card from? So if you forgot, we created an interface, and that's where we actually created our types. So that's how I imported right here. So let's actually see if this now works. So what I want to do is in console.log, and let's console log our data. Let's now again go back. Let me refresh the page. And if I now open my terminal, you see that we get in total 2 actual projects. In an array, we get our first project and then the second project. So what we can do now is actually map over them and show them right here. For that, let me delete this div right here. Let's create a new div. Let's style that. So let's give it a class name of padding white 10. Then let's also do in grid. Let's do on medium devices a grid calls of 2. And then let's do a gap, which will be 4. Let's do an SM of gap, which will be 6. And MD of gap 8. And then on larger devices, a gap of 12. Let's also do on small devices, so on mobile devices, a grid calls of 1. And now we should actually be already finished. Now inside of here, we have to now map over our data. So let's right here do in data.map. Let's get our item, and then let me just return that. Now for this code right here, it will be actually the same as in the projects. So I can just copy this A tag right here from our projects page, and then go back to our favorite projects component and just paste it right here. So now we have to also import the image. Currently it's throwing an error. So let's import that from next/image. And if I now save that, you see this error is gone. And now let's see if everything works. So let me go back, let's scroll down, and now you see the 2 projects right here. So this looks great. You see hovering works. We see all of the titles, the description, the tags, and this is great. Now let's also see if everything looks good on mobile. I'm not sure. So let's go to mobile. Yeah, this looks fine. This looks fine. This all looks good. This looks also good. And this looks also great. So now we are almost actually done. The last thing which I want to actually do is just render in small footer. For that, let's again create in separate components. So let me close everything. Let's go in the app folder. Let's go right here in the components folder, and let's create a footer.tsx. So let's right here do an export function. We'll just name it footer, and then let me just open that. Inside of here, let's create a return statement, and let's do a div. Let's say h1, and let's say hello from the footer. Let's save that. Let's see if that looks good. and you don't see anything. Now you probably already know why we don't see it. That's because we don't import that anywhere or we don't render it anywhere. So let's go to our page.tsx again, and then under our favorite projects, let me get the footer component. Let's save that, let's again go back, and now we see hello from the footer. Does it look good? Nope. So let's actually create a good looking footer. So now to actually make it look good, let's delete the return statement. Let's create right here a new footer element. And then inside of this footer, let me create a UL tag. Let's also right here get in class name. And then this will just be flex, which will be wrap. And let's also do a justify of center. Inside of here, now let's actually map over our items. And for that, if you can remember, in our navbar, we already created an array. And that's what I used, the navigation items array. So let me get it right here. Let's import that from our actual navbar. Let's do a .map. And then right here, let me get an item and let me just return that. Then inside of here, let me now render an actual div element. Let me right here give it a key. And I will just say right here, let me first of all get the index. So let's get the index. And let's give our index as a key. Then inside of here, let me give it in class name, and this will be padding x of 5 and padding y of 2. Then inside of this div, I can render our link component provided by next/link. For that, we have to give it an href since it's currently right here giving us an error, and then the href will be equal to item.href. Then let me also get in class name, and then this right here will just be text of muted, which will be foreground. And then inside of the link, let me now pass our item.name. Let's save that, let's see how that looks like. And I don't see anything, so it tells me right here attempted to call map from the server, but map is on the client. It's not possible to invoke a client function from the server. So what's the problem right here? Well, the problem right here is that our navbar is marked as use client, and we are trying to import navigation items from a client component into a server component. So what we can do right here on top is mark our navbar, or our footer, I'm sorry, as use client, and if I now save that and go back, this error will be now gone. If I scroll down now, you see the navbar right here. So this looks good, the error is gone, and now the last thing which I want to do is just write like a small copyright. So under this UL, let's create a p tag, and then inside of here, what you can use is an and sign, then say copy, then this right here, I don't know, colon, I guess, then let's say 2024, let's say Jan Marshall, dot, and let me say all rights reserved. Let's again say in dot, let's save that, let's go back. Yeah, that's fine, but I have to style that. So let me give right here the p tag a class name. Let's do margin top of 5. Let's say text of center. Let's do text of base. And then let's also maybe do a text of muted, which will be foreground. I can actually delete the text base. It's not important. It's already default. Let's now actually save that. Let's see what that looks like. And yeah, this is fine, but I will change a few things. So first of all, margin top 5. Let's maybe change it to margin top 2. Let's save that. Yeah, this is better. Now I also want to have a bit of more margin to the top and also to the bottom. So let's go back, and then for this footer, let me give it in class name, and this will be margin y, so my, so margin on the vertical side of, let's say 12. Let's see how that looks like. Yeah, this is good. I think I will leave it like that. And now if I actually try to click on the links, you also see that they actually work. So if I click on Guestbook, I get redirected to the Guestbook page. So yeah, this looks good. Let's see how it looks like on mobile also before I actually finish that. So yeah, let's scroll. Yeah, this looks good. This looks good. And the navbar, or I guess the footer, also looks great. Let me now click right here on the navbar. Yeah, this opens. Let me click on Guestbook. It closes. Let me go to the projects. Yeah, this looks good. But one thing I see when I click on Guestbook is that this button does not take the whole width. So what we have to do is again go to our Guestbook page. Let me investigate a bit. So we have right here our Guestbook form. And then this button right here, let me get in class name of wfull. And if I now save that and go back, you now see this button takes the whole width. And this looks good. Let me also see for our form, if I also give it right here in width of full. And right here, do I give it in width of full? Nope. So let me right here give it in class name, and this will be W of full. And then for this button, let me also do in class name of W full. Let's save it. Let's again go back. And yes, this looks all great. Let me click on projects. Yes, this also looks good. So I guess we are now done. Alright everyone, I guess we're done. Mobile looks good, desktop looks good, all of the pages look good, everything looks quite great. So what I think we should do now is actually deploy our application to Vercel. And before we can can actually do that, we first of all have to push our code to GitHub. So let's actually do that right now. I'm at github.com/new right now. So let's right here create a new repository. So let me right here create a name. So let me say portfolio Nextjs.14. Then let me leave it at public and let me click on create repository. So right here you will now see we'll get a quick start guide. But what I'll do is again go back. Let me open my terminal. Let me right here open a new terminal tab. And then inside of here, what I now do is in git init. Then let's do in git add everything. So git add with a dot. Then I have to actually commit our files. So let's do in git commit -m. And then for the message, let's just say finished project. Let me click on enter. Now it has committed everything. Then the next step right here is to create a branch. So let me copy this. Let's paste it right here. Then let's add our remote origin. So I'll copy that and paste it right here. And then let me also push our code. So I will copy this and paste it right here. So now we have actually pushed our code to GitHub. You see it's currently doing that. And if I now head over back to GitHub, refresh the page, you will now see all of our code right here. Now this looks quite good. So let's now actually deploy our application at Vercel. So I'm now at vercel.com/new to deploy our application, and right here you already see portfolio-Nextjs.14. This is what we need. So let me click on import right here. Then right here we have now our actual configuration presets, and before I click deploy, there's one very important thing. We have to go to our environment variables and actually copy them and paste them. So let me copy these right here, and then let me paste them right here for the environment variables. Let me now click on deploy. And now let's see if we get any errors. Spoiler alert, I already know we'll get errors, so let's wait for the error. Alright, so we got an error right here, tells me failed to compile, type error, cannot find module Sanity Vision. Weird, why is it trying to deploy Sanity right here? So currently what the problem is that right here Vercel tries to deploy Sanity, but Sanity can't be deployed to Vercel. So what we have to do right here is actually tell Vercel to ignore the Sanity folder and to just not deploy it. So for that there's a very handy file. This is the Vercel ignore file. So let's do .vercel ignore. Let's open that, and inside of here I will just have to write the name of our Sanity folder, and the name is Sanity. So let's just write Sanity. Let's save that. Let's again push our code. So let me right here just clear everything in our terminal. Let's do git add everything with a dot. Then let's right here do git commit and -m, and for the message I will just say added Vercel ignore. Let me click on enter and let's do git push. The nice thing with Vercel is now that it will actually listen to our git repository change and automatically redeploy our application. So let me head over back to Vercel and let's check that out. So as you now see, Vercel is again automatically rebuilding the application, and we're now again in a building state. Now one thing you should know is that we will again get an error in a second, but let's wait for that. Alright, so we got an error, and this time it's a Prisma error. And right here it says Prisma has detected that this project was built on Vercel, which caches dependencies. This leads to an outdated Prisma client because of Prisma's auto generation isn't triggered. To fix this, make sure to run Prisma generate command. Now you could do that, but we can also click right here on learn more or on learn how. So let me right here open that in a new tab, and instead of doing Prisma generate, which does not work actually, at least it never worked for me, there's a very handy fix, and this is in post install script. So I'll copy this post install script right here. Then let's open our env file, or not our env but our package.json, and then right here under the lint command, or this lint I guess script, I can actually paste our post install script. So what it will do right here is actually right here use this post install script and then run Prisma generate when building our application. And now before I actually push our code, there's now one thing which I haven't actually really talked about, and this is caching. So if you didn't know, Nextjs uses server components, and when it actually uses them, it caches them automatically indefinitely. So what would happen now is if we would deploy our application right here, so this application, it would be cached indefinitely. Now this is okay for the homepage, but for example for our guestbook, we don't want to have any caching. I want to see my guestbook messages, and to see them, they can't really be cached. At least they can't be cached indefinitely. The same for our projects. If I would now deploy this application, I would see these two projects because they would get pre-rendered, but if I would go to Sanity and try to create a new project, they wouldn't show up right here, again, because the data would be cached. So what we have to do is actually tell Nextjs, so in other words Vercel, which data it should revalidate and when to revalidate it. So let's start with the projects. Let me go to our projects page. So how do I actually now tell Vercel, or in other words Next.js, when to revalidate our data? Well, right here where we actually fetch our data, what I can do right here is in comma, then add an empty object, again add in comma, then inside of here we can actually use our next property, open that, this will again have an object, and then right here we now have our revalidate tag. Now right here I can now tell Vercel, or again in other words Next.js, when to revalidate our data. Now this is based on a time frame, which means 10 seconds for example, a minute, I don't know, 10 minutes, an hour. As already said, you can choose whatever time you want right here. Now, I probably personally will say right here 30 seconds. I think this is fine enough. So I will right here just say 30. And with that, I now said, hey, Next.js revalidate this data every 30 seconds. Also, one thing which I want to do right here is to actually tell right here Prisma, or I'm sorry, not Prisma, but to tell Sanity to actually order these items by the created at timestamp. So currently we just get our data randomly, but I want to actually get the newest, I guess, items at first. So let me right here just add in vertical line, then let's do an order, let's do an underscore created at, and then this will just be descending to get the newest items at first. So I think this is now done. We actually revalidate this data. Let's now also do the same for our favorite projects component. So let me right here again add in comma, an empty object, then let me get an add again in comma, then right here let me get next, and then right here let's do revalidate of 30 seconds. So our projects are now done. This is good. But one thing which we also have to now do is right here the guestbook page. So this is now also currently cached indefinitely. So let's change that. Let me open my guestbook page, and then right here we could now do two things. Either I could do an export const revalidate 0 and some stuff like that, or there's actually an helper function. So right here what I can do now is do an import. So let's do an import, that's destructured, and this will be from next/cache. Then right here where we destructured, let me right here get unstable no store, and let's do an as no store. So if I now use that, I automatically tell Next.js, hey, please don't cache this page at all. So if I now use it right here in our async function get guestbook entry, at the top right here I can just do no store and then actually invoke that. If I now save that, you will now see that I've told Next.js to, hey, please don't actually cache this page, leave it alone, skip it I guess, and just get me the fresh data. So this is now done. Now there's one more thing where we actually fetch data, or I guess where we handle data, and this is our API routes. So the API routes work the same as server components, which means they are cached automatically. Now this is of course not quite what we want, so what we have to do right here is actually tell Vercel to not cache them. So right here for our creation route, where we have it right here, let me again add or import our no store helper. So let's do an import, let's destructure it, and this will be from next/cache. Then right here, let me get my unstable no store. Let's do an as no store. And then let me right here get in our get function no store, and let's invoke that. So now I told Vercel also to not actually cache this page. And now this is also done. So now I think we're actually done with caching. So let me see. We only have our app folder and we only fetch data in the projects and then also in the component in the guestbook. Then in the API folder, I only have to do that in the creation route, because in this kind of folder, or I guess in this kind of API route, everything is already done automatically. So I would personally say we are now done with that. So let's now actually push our data or our code to GitHub again to rebuild our application. So let me clear everything in the terminal. Let's do git add everything within dot. Let's do git commit -m, and let's just say caching is finished. Then let me click on enter, and let's do a git push to push our code to GitHub. So Vercel will now automatically rebuild our application. So let's check that out. Alright, so as you see now, Vercel is rebuilding our application right here. So let's now wait for that. I think we should not get any errors, but let's see. Alright, so Vercel has now built our application. So it has been now deployed. So let me actually right here open that. Let's go to project, and then let me open right here my domain. So as you see now, this is our website. I can zoom in a bit more for you guys so that you see something, and this is how it looks like. Quite nice, right? So let me right here click on guestbook. Let's see if this works. We have right here our pending state. This looks good. Let me click on projects. We have my projects right here. Let's go to guestbook. Let's try to create an actual message. Let me right here just like say, I don't know, hello, how are you? Let me click on sign for free. We now get redirected to Kinde to sign up. Let me continue with GitHub. We have in pending state right here, and we now should get redirected to our application. Let's see what happens right now. And we got an error. What's the problem right here? It just tells me right here, this page isn't working. Localhost is currently unable to handle this request. Weird. Why did we get redirected to localhost? Well, the problem is actually if you go to Vercel, click right here on settings and then search for the environment variables, we right here have a kind site URL. So if I click right here on edit, you will see that the kind site URL is localhost 3000. But is it localhost 3000? Nope, it's our deployed version, which is on this deployed URL right here. Now you probably have a different URL, that's fine, but this is my deployed URL. So what I have to do right here is copy that actually, and then instead of localhost 3000, I can now paste my actual URL. Now there's one important thing now, please listen, please. So what you have to do right here is delete the slash at the end. So it should end with .app, so please delete the slash at the end, it's very important. Then let me right here click on save. Let's now go to the kind post login redirect URL. Let me click right here on edit, and now instead of localhost 3000, let me right here actually change it to my deployed application URL, and then let me right here click on save, and let's do the same also for the kind post logout redirect URL. So let me click on edit, and instead of localhost 3000, let me paste my actual URL, and again please delete the slash at the end. Let me now click on save, and now this is done. But we are still not fully done. We have to now go also into the kind dashboard. So let's head over to kind. Alright, so I'm now in the kind dashboard, and what we have to do right here is for my applications, let's click on view details, and then inside of here where we have our actual allowed callback URLs, we have to add a new URL. So let me again copy the URL of my deployed version. Let me paste it right here. Let me leave the old localhost 3000 URL right there. I'll add a new one right here, and then this will be the URL of the deployed version, and then /API/auth/kind_callback. Let's now also add the URL right here for the allowed logout redirect URL. So let me again copy the URL and then paste it right here under the localhost 3000. It's again very important to please delete the slash at the end, or else you will get errors. So now let me click on save. So this is now done, which is great. But one thing which you also have to do now is actually go to the API route, so to our creation route. So let me open that right here. And what you will see right here is that we redirect to localhost 3000. This is not what I want. I want to redirect to our actual deployed version. So let me again copy the URL right here. And then instead of localhost 3000, I redirect to my deployed version /guestbook. Let me now push that again to GitHub. So let me clear everything. Let's do git add everything with a dot. Let's do git commit -m. For the message, I will just say totally finished, and then let me click on enter, and let's do git push. So this will now push the code to GitHub, and Vercel will again automatically rebuild the application. So if I click on deployments, you see it already automatically rebuilds this application, which is great. So now let's wait till that's done, and then I will come back. Alright, Vercel has successfully built our application, so let me again click on the URL right here, and let's see if everything works. So again, this is my homepage. Let me click on Guestbook. Let me right here write a message, some gibberish. Let me click on sign for free. I will now get redirected to kind to authenticate. So let me authenticate with GitHub. I should now get redirected again back to our Guestbook page. So let's see if this works. And yes, as you see, I got redirected. Alright, so as you see, this does not look that good. That's because I made an error. So instead of right here class name wfull, I think I should actually again delete that. So let me delete that, and then later on we'll again push our code to actually redeploy that. But for now it does not really make a difference. So let me write a message. Hey, this is a deployed test. Let me click on sign for free. We have in pending state. It should now get revalidated right here, and that's what we see. So that looks good. So what I want to do now is actually go back to GitHub. Let me first of all right here actually again push my code. So what I'll do right here is in git add everything with a dot. Let's do in git commit -m. Let's say changed width. Then let me do in git push, and let's push that for now. Then while this is now pushed, let me clear everything actually. Let me then cd into the sanity folder, and what I want to do now is actually deploy the sanity folder. So let me right here do an npm1 deploy to deploy the sanity folder. This will now be deployed, and it will also ask me a few questions. So for the studio host name, I'll just say portfolio -YouTube. Let me click on enter. You see the host name is already taken. So let me right here just again run npm1 deploy. And then for the studio host name, let me say Next.js.14, I don't know, portfolio Marshall. Let me click on enter. Then this should now be actually deployed. Let's see. Alright, so this has been now deployed, but before we test it out, let me again head over to my deployed version. Let's again reload this page. Let's see if this now width is fixed. Yes, it's fixed. Let me again create a message. Hello. Let's click on sign for free. We have in pending state and we see right here in revalidation and we see the message. So that looks good. Let me click on projects. Let me refresh the page. We again see right here 2 projects and that's good. So what we can now do is open right here our deployed version for Sanity Studio. Let's open that in a new tab. And what I want to do right here is create a new project to see if the revalidation works. So right here for the title, let's just say revalidation test. Let me upload an image. Then for the description, I will just say, hey, does revalidation work right here? And then let's scroll down. For the link, I will just copy right here our URL. Let's paste that. And for the tags, let's just say Next.js, revalidation, test, hello. And let me right here click on publish. So this should now get published. It's now published as you see. Let me head over to my page. Let's refresh our page. And now in about 30 seconds, we should see our new project. So let me again refresh the page. And now you see right here revalidation test with the image. And in total, we have now 3 projects. If I now again refresh the page, you see everything is persisted and that's great. So I guess our project is done. Let me again test everything out. Right here we have the home page, the hero. This all looks good. Yep, this is cool. Let me go to our guest book. Yes, we have in pending state. This looks great. Let me head over to projects. And yes, this also looks good. If I would now click on one link, you would see it would now open the actual URL. So I guess we are now done with today's video. Alright everyone, so as you see everything is working. We are now done with today's video. Thank you Kind for sponsoring this video. Thank you guys for actually watching the videos. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe. I hope I can see you in the next video. And now, bye.